And now, live inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, here's Mike Gill.
Controversy in the quarterback room because these guys support each other, and there will be no quarterback controversy involving Nick Sirianni because he will tell you flat out our starting quarterback is Jalen Hurts. I believe in him. I believe in his ability, and I think he will continue to get better.
Minshew 20 of 25 on the day, Mr. Reese, 242 yards, 2 touchdowns.
You might just hear it starting, well, right now. It's the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. As you heard Merrill Reese and Mike Quick kind of discussing at the end of the Eagles' win over the Jets yesterday, it wouldn't be Philadelphia if we didn't have a QB controversy. It wouldn't be Philadelphia if everybody wanted the backup quarterback to then be the starting quarterback. And it wouldn't be Philadelphia if it didn't happen on a bye week, so we all have 2 weeks to pontificate it. But that's where we are. Eagles beat the Jets yesterday, and a big day for one Gardner Minshew, as the Delaware Valley got a chance to experience what they call Minshew Mania. You all got a little taste of what Minshew Mania is like, and it seems that many of you out there liked what you saw from the Mustache Man. I'm your host, Mike Gill. Josh Hennings producing today's show. And you out there, as the Eagles beat the Jets. And with the win, they put themselves in very prime playoff positioning behind the Washington football team who, the Eagles needed a little help yesterday. They got help. You know, during the week, we'll tell you who you're rooting for. And the Eagles got some help yesterday from a couple of games that you didn't expect. You got help from Seattle yesterday. They beat San Francisco. But the big game that you got help in was Detroit beating Minnesota 29-27. So you had the Lions get their first win of the year. But that win ends up helping Philadelphia out. The Giants lost yesterday. What was the other game that you kind of need? Oh, the Buccaneers beat the Falcons. That was the other one. So almost every single game that we told you who you're rooting for went the way that you wanted it to go, except for the Washington football team, who scored late in that game. Brian Johnson with the go-ahead kick for Washington as they beat Vegas 17-15 last night. Washington gets to 6-6. They've won 4 in a row. Philadelphia wins, gets them to 6-7. The loss by San Francisco last night, that puts them at 6-6, and then all of a sudden the playoff race has gotten interesting. In fact, I thought about this the other day. You remember that Washington Eagles game? We sent tickets for 99 bottles. Someone's going to watch that game. That game had the option of being played on a Saturday. I'm sure the television networks are probably saying, man, I wish we would have taken that game instead, because all of a sudden Washington's won 4 straight, Philadelphia's 6-7. They're within a half a game of each other for the 7th seed in the playoffs. Actually, Washington is currently the 6th seed in the NFL playoffs. So let's get into it all now. All right. Gardner Minshew had just a brilliant game yesterday in theory. But did he really play all that well? Or, this is what Eagle fans like to do. The Eagles opened the season with a big win over the Atlanta Falcons. And in that game, if you remember, Jalen Hurts had a pretty good game. He was 27 of 35 for 264 yards. He had 3 touchdown passes in the game. Pretty good. He had 7 carries for 62 yards. Jalen Hurts was the talk of the town after 1 week. But all the people out there said, it's only against Atlanta. Those same people are the ones that were saying, I want Gardner Minshew, but I don't hear the, it's only against the Jets. It seems that we're quickly able to change our thoughts when we don't want to believe in the other guy. Quite frankly, I thought Minshew played a pretty good game yesterday, all things considered. But that being said, Gardner Minshew's first touchdown pass to Dallas Goedert was severely underthrown. His touchdown pass to Dallas Goedert the second time was severely underthrown. The Jets are just so bad that there was nobody in the area code. Now, I thought Minshew, I'm not knocking Minshew. I thought he played very well yesterday. He made a couple of nice passes where he led his receivers. I love the fact that he got Goddard involved in the game, but I will say, what happened to Smith in the game yesterday? He wasn't a part of the game at all. Miles Sanders over 100 yards rushing, big day for him. So where do we stand with Gardner Minshew as the quarterback of this football team? Well, yesterday, right after the game was over, Nick Sirianni said, of course Jalen Hurts is the starting quarterback. They have a bye this week. Hurts should be ready to go. It was Saturday night when Derek Gunn put out a report that said Hurts would not play, Minshew would start, and at that point, I just started to see the flood of people just commenting that, thank God, I can't wait to see Minshew. I want this Minshew. Look, here's what I'll tell you about Minshew. I thought he played a very good game yesterday. I am not knocking Minshew at all. But does anybody out there think that Gardner Minshew is a franchise-leading quarterback? Like, look, the story's great. The video with his dad's great. He's great. He's a character. He's the guy that everybody wants to love. I'm not knocking that. And you might say, well, Hurts isn't the guy either. Well, if Hurts isn't the guy, and if you're saying Minshew's not the guy, then why are you playing Minshew? What is your reason that you play Minshew over Hurts? Other than the fact that you just like what he did against the New York Jets yesterday. But I could give you the same thing and say, well, Jalen Hurts played really good against the Atlanta Falcons. Well, it was only the Falcons. Perspective, people. Gardner Minshew is the guy. You've all heard about Minshew mania. He is the prototypical highlight era that we live in. People don't ever watch Gardner Minshew play. You've only heard of Gardner Minshew and the Minshew mania because he has a cool nickname attached to him. He has a look that stands out. Although the mullet is gone, he still has the Fu Manchu, and he walks in with a bomber jacket. And he's a pretty likable guy. I have nothing wrong with Minshew. You've seen and heard of Minshew mania because the highlight shows put Minshew mania on the screen when he does something that merits it. But there's a lot of games that you don't see Minshew mania. And you go weeks where it's out of sight, out of mind, and then all of a sudden, oh, there's that Minshew guy again. Well, they didn't show you what happened in the 4 weeks in between because Gardner Minshew is what he is, a very good NFL backup. See, what people don't want to admit is the Eagles made a smart decision, and that would mean we have to give Howie Roseman credit. But they made a smart move in the offseason and said, hey, look, what do all good teams have? All good teams have a really good backup quarterback. So what did the Eagles do? Hey, let's go out and get a good backup quarterback. They gave up a 6th-round pick to get him. They traded away Joe Flacco and got the pick back to replace it and upgraded the position all in one swoop. The Eagles are 6-7. They're in a playoff race. And this is the mark of a, dare I say, good football team. What do good football teams do? They find a way to win when their starting quarterback is out. The Dallas Cowboys should take notes because when their starting quarterback goes out, their season falls apart. The Philadelphia Eagles said, look, if our starting quarterback goes out, we need a guy who can keep us in the playoff race. Enter Gardner Minshew. They have a backup quarterback that can win a game or two or maybe more. Who knows? I mean, Minshew is no slouch. But if the Eagles end up making the playoffs, we're going to look back to the move that Howie Roseman pulled in the middle of the offseason on a August day right before the season started and said, you know what? There's a cheap backup down there in Jacksonville. He's battling for the starting position, but he has no chance to win that with Trevor Lawrence there. He doesn't make a lot of money. He's on a very manageable deal. And if our quarterback gets hurt or can't play, he could step in and help us out. Let me go after that guy. The move to get Gardner Minshew shows two things. One, the Eagles, believe it or not, are a good team. Every good team values the backup quarterback position. So are the Eagles good, or are they smart, or are they both? Are they good like Super Bowl good? Not necessarily. But are they moving in the right direction? Are they smart? These are things that most people don't want to admit. But let's be clear on this. The Jets are awful. And that's why Gardner Minshew created Minshew Mania for Eagles fans. The Jets' defense is one of the worst defenses you'll ever see. They are so bad. Guys were open all over the place. Jalen Hurts is not afforded the same openings versus most teams when he's playing quarterback. Now, the question is, Gardner Minshew made plays. He had plays to be made. I think we can all admit the first touchdown pass he threw to Goddard was underthrown. I mean, Goddard's standing there at the 5-yard line all by himself. There's nobody there, but he had to stop to turn around and catch the ball. I'm not knocking Minshew. I like Minshew. I hope he gets opportunities down the road when people get hurt and he plays well. I don't want people to get hurt, but I like having him around if they do. But like most backup quarterbacks, I think if you get the opportunity to play a lot, you're going to get exposed a lot. It happens a lot in baseball. There was a time when the Phillies fans wanted a guy by the name of John Mayberry Jr. to play left field every day. You know, when he came into pinch hit, he always seemed to hit a home run. But then if you played him every day, teams see tape, they figure him out, and then John Mayberry Jr. turns into, well, John Mayberry Jr. Let's not wish that for Gardner Minshew. You know, Minshew's got some pretty good NFL numbers, by the way. He's thrown like 36 touchdowns and only 11 interceptions. He is a serviceable guy, but he hasn't won a lot of games. So let's be happy with what you have. A really good backup quarterback. What you need to find out is whether or not you have a really good starting quarterback. Because if Minshew is now your starting quarterback, chances are you're going to be looking for your next starting quarterback. The Jaguars were. And why would it be any different for the Eagles? 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. Text board is open. Download the free mobile app on your phone. You can message us through the phone. And, of course, if you're watching the show live on our YouTube video stream, live video, you can message us over there. All right, so text messages are coming in. I'm going to read some off and react. Look, I thought the game, it was back and forth. The Eagles' defense played awful the first half of that game. Jets go down the kickoff return, then they go in and score. Eagles come back, they answer. Jets come right back and score. They miss both extra points. It shows you how bad the Jets are. Just a bad football game, really. I mean, it's an ugly game. Eagles' defense, terrible. Then Minshew, and the Eagles' offense starts to get really going in the second. They score 17 points in the second. They dominate the game in the third in terms of time of possession. And the Eagles' defense, give them credit. They were awful in the first half. They made the adjustments. They didn't give up a point in the second half, and they just dominate the game. What was my score? On Friday, I gave you, what did I say? 31-17. It was 33-18. I had a game ball. My game ball went to Dallas Goedert on offense, so I got that. And my game ball on defense was TJ Edwards, which I don't think Edwards really did anything to stand out other than the fact that he did lead the defense with 11 tackles yesterday. So I don't know. If you want to give anybody the game ball on defense, you can pick. I mean, you can go Epps. He had a big pick in that game. I think he played pretty well. You could go Josh Sweat. He had a pretty good game. But TJ Edwards had 11 tackles in the game. So maybe I got them both right. Dallas Goedert, TJ Edwards, they were my game balls, and I had 31-17. The score was 33-18. I mean, that game went pretty much the way I thought it should and would go. You got Gardner Minshew, the backup quarterback, who excels, the tight end. Who's the backup quarterback's best friend is always the tight end. So that was pretty predictable. Although Friday, I will say, I didn't realize that Minshew was playing. That didn't come out till Saturday, but Goddard, 6 catches, 105 yards. I thought the game was really won in the third quarter. When you take a look at the third quarter of that game, it was just evident that, Philadelphia had the ball for 8 minutes, 14-play drive, and they end up getting just the field goal there. But they really, 27-18, it's a 2-score game almost, felt like you were it just felt like insurmountable for the Jets with that much time left. Even though the Jets offense moved up and down the field, you just didn't think they were going to stop the Eagles. So and then the Eagles got the ball back for another 13-play drive. The Jets defense was just so bad. We talked about it all week. They can't stop the run. Holy mackerel, are they bad? 609-403-0973. Let me check in on some text messages here. What do you got?
Greeny mentioned this on his show earlier because Greeny's a big Jets fan. They mentioned the Jets are the worst defense in allowing quarterbacks to play against them this year. They have allowed the highest combined quarterback rating all season long. So the Jets defense, anyone can look good against them.
Yeah, Greeny today, somebody just texted this in about 7 minutes ago, said that quarterbacks average a 108 QBR versus the Jets defense. That's why I can't put a lot of stock in what Minshew did.
Right.
I like this text here. Alex from Delhaven says, Gardner Minshew is a younger version of Ryan Fitzpatrick. He'll give you a spark when needed, but when you hand him the keys, he doesn't get it done. I think that's a good observation by Alex from Delhaven. Everybody likes Fitzpatrick. I like we all love Fitzmagic. You don't like Fitzpatrick. You like Fitzmagic.
Right.
And Fitzmagic only comes out every once in a while.
Right.
It's usually Fitzpatrick. You only heard of this mythical Fitzmagic, and it seems to happen when he plays against your team. But then when he plays against other teams, he kind of turns back into the Fitzpatrick guy. And for the most part, Fitzpatrick is about a 500 quarterback. Minshew has Minshew mania. He doesn't have Minshew mania every single week. He has it every once in a while.
If he had Minshew mania every single week, as you mentioned earlier, why do they draft Trevor Lawrence?
Right. If Minshew mania was out every single week, I don't need to have the number 1 overall pick to take a quarterback because I would already think I have my quarterback. But alas, Minshew mania only comes out like Halloween and then maybe like
the holidays,
Thanksgiving, and then Christmas. There's a lot of gaps in between when you get to see this Minshew mania. It doesn't mean it's a bad thing to have Minshew mania. The holidays are fun, but they're only fun once a month.
Right.
Not every single week. If you had to have Thanksgiving dinner every single week, you'd probably be not so thrilled. If you had to dress up for Halloween every single week, that would start to get a little bit monotonous. If you had to buy Christmas presents and do the whole Christmas holiday every single week,
you run out of money, actually, but
you would run out of money. Yes, you'd also run out of gift ideas.
Exactly.
This is Minshew mania, okay? So while I like Minshew, I love the fact that he's the backup quarterback here. He's a character. He's great in terms of having him in the locker room. He's everything you want in the backup quarterback. Can we please not be like, this is the guy, we got to go to Minshew? The same people who want to go to Minshew now are the same people who send me the Jim Mora gifts when I told you the Eagles could make the playoffs. What? They can't make the playoffs? Are you out of your mind? Are you cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs? No, I'm not cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Do you watch football? This league stinks. Of course the Eagles can make the playoffs. If you were someone who watched football and then also told me the Eagles couldn't make the playoffs this year after watching 3 weeks of this season, you have no idea what you're talking about. None. But now you're telling me you want Minshew to be the quarterback. Why? Because he gives them the best chance to win, and you got to make the playoffs. The same people who didn't want to go to the playoffs now want Minshew to be the quarterback so they can get a better chance of making the playoffs. Do you see how wild and crazy people are? It is unbelievably exasperating. Oh.
Get your breath, Mike.
It was fun to have Minshew Mania for a week. But let's get back to reality, people. The Eagles aren't just going to, at the knee-jerk reaction, be like, wow, that was kind of cool. Let's do it again. No. Thanksgiving's over. No, we want to move on to the next one. Like, if you need Minshew in a week or two from now, fine. But you don't want to just go back to Minshew because Thanksgiving dinner tasted good. You don't have turkey any other day of the year. Why would we do that with Minshew? There's no reason. Dan, for me, HT, the Eagles are 6-7 for a reason. They have 2 quarterbacks who are 6-7. When you don't have a top-tier quarterback, you're going to be up and down. The year of the Super Bowl proved the best. Wentz was 11-1. He was on his way to winning MVP. See, look, Dan and EHT, look at the league right now. Okay? Look at the league right now. It's not that the Eagles have 2 quarterbacks. It's that the league is filled with teams that just, there's not great quarterback play in this league. And even teams who have good quarterbacks. I mean, the Dolphins tanked for Tua. They're 6-7. The Jets had the 2nd pick in the draft. They took a quarterback. They're 3-9. The Ravens had the MVP of the league at quarterback. They lost to the Steelers last night. The Bengals had the number 1 overall pick in the league at quarterback. And guess what? He's pretty darn good. And they're 7-5. Cleveland had the number 1 pick in the league at quarterback. And they're 6-6. Indianapolis has a guy in Carson Wentz who's pretty good. Not great. They're 7-6. The Chargers have a guy that I think every team in the league would say, I'll take that guy. They're 7-5. Derek Carr's pretty good. 6-6. Minnesota 5-7. I know people don't love Kirk Cousins, but the Vikings saw enough in him to give him what? $90 million guaranteed money? The Lions have the number 1 pick overall in the league on their roster playing quarterback. They're 1-10. Carolina has the guy who was drafted 3rd. They're 5-7. Having this quarterback thing is something we all hope for, but really doesn't exist all that much. You got to be really, really lucky to get that guy. Tampa has that guy. They're 9-3. Arizona seemingly has that guy. They're 10-2. Even the great Seahawks, who have Russell Wilson, are 4-8. This whole quarterback thing, it's great when you have the Bradys and the Mannings and the Breezes of the world. But they are few and far between, the Aaron Rodgers. And everybody else, they're all just trying to find something different. You know, when we try to build a team, it's like anything. People didn't like the Sixers tanking. Oh, you don't have to tank. That's not how you... There's more than one way to build a roster. And in the NFL, the best way is like the NBA. If the NBA, you can get that super duper star like LeBron James, you have a chance to win every single year. In the NFL, when you have that super duper quarterback, you have a chance to win every single season. The problem is there's only one LeBron James. And there's only one Tom Brady. So everybody else has to try to find a different way to win when you can't find Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady. Because you know what? Those guys are really hard to find. So you got to be good with something else. And that's what the Eagles are trying to find out. Can they be good with a guy who's really good at certain things and has limitations in others? But do we have enough complementary pieces? And I got news for you. It's going to be hard to win every single week if Gardner Minshew is your quarterback. Because eventually people are going to say, this guy does this really well, but he doesn't do this, this, and this. And once we find out what you do pretty good, you better have a second gear. And that's why you only hear about Minshew Mania every once in a while. Because that second gear, it ain't the same as the first gear.
And all those teams you mentioned with Brady, Rodgers, Murray, they're also really good football teams. There's really good talent on those teams.
Yeah, but those guys even clear up the fact when you don't have good talent sometimes.
Sometimes.
That's
Not
why
every
they
time.
are who they are. And not every team can do that. Not every quarterback can do that. Justin Herbert is really good, but they're only 7-5 for a reason. He's only so good to do so much, and that team is really just average. Joe Burrow's really good. He's got Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, but he can't overcome the fact that his offensive line isn't very good.
And his defense isn't very good. Teams win championships, not quarterbacks.
609 403 0973. 609 403 0973. Text board is jamming right now, so get your text messages in. I'm going to react to them on the other side. Mike McGarry, Grayson's Grades. By the way, the Flyers have fired Alain Vigneault. That happened today as well. Sports Bash is live on 97.3 ESPN. Flyers insider Kevin Durso. Why now? Why did it happen? And what's next? 3:40 today. Stick around. 231 Sports Bash is brought to you by Matt Blatt Kia. Matt Blatt wants to get you approved today. Matt Blatt Kia, 6211 Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township. I'm Mike Gill. We all got a little case of Minshew mania. But let's calm down, everybody. Text messages are coming in on this conversation, 609-403-0973. Grant in Margate says, Gardner shouldn't be enough to warrant another start. The offense was grooving yesterday. Defense still has major holes, but I think the scheme issue more than talent. Well, there's a lot in that thing that is really interesting to kind of break down. I would say this. One, Grant, and I appreciate your text message. The defense still has major holes, and you said it's a scheme issue more than talent. They didn't give up a point in the second half. Right? They made their adjustments. They fixed the scheme. I thought in the first half they were very passive. It's like, do you really think Zach Wilson's going to beat you? And I think they went into halftime and the players said, Coach, this guy can't beat us. We're out on the field with this guy. He can't beat us. And I thought he did a much better job. So, yeah, the defense has some holes, but they weren't your issue in the second half yesterday. You said Gardner showed you enough to warrant another start. Didn't Jalen Hurts do enough in the game against Atlanta to say, hey, man, this guy deserves another chance? He had 3 touchdowns in the game. He threw for 260-plus yards. I mean, in that game against Atlanta, Jalen Hurts, I mean, he was the story everywhere. He had a quarterback rating of 126. So if you said, hey, Jalen Hurts showed me he had, the point is it, and you would say, well, Jalen Hurts got some more chances. He played against other teams. He's had some good games, Jalen Hurts. Some of the games they lost, like the game against the Chiefs. The game against the Chiefs, Jalen Hurts in that game threw for 387 yards and 2 touchdowns. He was 32 of 48 for 387 yards. The defense gave up 42 points in that game. They didn't lose because Jalen Hurts. The week before against Dallas, he had 326 yards and 2 touchdowns. So if you take the wins and losses portion out of it, the defense gave up 41 against Dallas. Jalen Hurts has played some really good games this year. So if you're saying, well, I saw enough out of Minshew to warrant another start, they play the Jets. The offense was grooving yesterday. The Eagles' offense has been grooving a lot this year. They just didn't win those games because their defense was a problem. Like, do we just not like Jalen Hurts? And you're like, Gardner showed me enough? Because Grant, and I appreciate your text message, Grant, hasn't Hurts showed enough to warrant more chances this season in certain games? You're not going to play that well every single game as a second-year quarterback. You're going to have some ups and downs. But if you're saying Gardner showed you enough in one game, that seems to be ulterior motives as to why you don't want Hurts to play.
Hurts has 4 games with a 100 or better quarterback rating and a 5th game with a 94.7 quarterback rating. In those games, the Eagles are 2-3.
The defense was a big problem in the loss to Dallas, the loss to the Chiefs, and the loss to Tampa Bay.
And also the Raiders.
And the Raiders. Those 4 games, their defense was overmatched. The game against the 49ers, I don't think that
was the offense.
Hurts played very well in that game.
That was Sirianni, in my opinion.
I also think Sirianni had a bad game plan in that game.
I still contend Sirianni was trying to outsmart Kyle Shanahan.
If you think about it, in that game, Hurts was 190 yards. He ran 10 times for 82 yards. They just did not have a very good game plan in that game.
No.
But look, Hurts has not been great every single week. But we're so quick to rush because Minshew had one good game. I mean, like the guy says, he showed me enough to warrant another start. He played the Jets.
You realize he played the Jets. Exactly.
Yeah. Mike, I'm not sure the scheme was much different in the second half. The Eagles offense held the ball for 13 minutes in the second quarter. That's a fair assessment. They didn't have to play a lot of defense in the third quarter of that game. So that's fair. But in the fourth quarter, I do think that they played like they didn't give up that crappy fourth quarter touchdown, that there was a point where they were driving a little bit, and my father was over watching the game with me. I said, if they score here, it's back to a 1-score game with like 6 minutes left, And the Eagles defense buckled down and didn't give up that cheapy touchdown. That's where I'm saying they made some adjustments in the second half, because in the first half, that same drive, the Jets went down the field and scored. In that fourth quarter, when they had a chance to make it a one-score game, the Eagles defense stepped up and made a play. Who made that? Let me go.
What, the interception?
There was the interception. Who
Marcus
was it?
Epps.
Oh, it was Epps. Right. Epps was the guy. He had that interception that sealed that
Epps
game.
has played good for a few weeks here.
He did. No, Epps had that interception that kind of sealed that game. And the defense, that text message is right, that they didn't really have to ask their defense to do a whole heck of a lot. All right, Sports Bash Live. What does it mean? Obviously, Minshew Mania for one day is great. But you don't have Minshew Mania every single week for a reason, everybody. Let's settle down. We'll ask Mike McGarry what he thinks. That's next. Great high school football games this weekend. Mike McGarry has been covering high school football. Heck, he covered me when I played, I think. And I'm 44. He may have seen the best high school football game he's ever covered this weekend. We'll ask him about that and more. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. Flyers have fired Alain Vigneault. For the details, go to our website, 973ESPN.com. 243 Sports Bash. Gardner Minshew leads the Eagles to victory. They are 6-7, just a half game out of the 6th spot and the 7th spot in the NFC wildcard race. Could 3 teams from the NFC East make the playoffs? Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City set to join us right now. We'll discuss what happened in the NFC East and everything else that's going on as he joins me right now, of course, on a Monday here on 97.3 ESPN. What's going on, Mike?
Hey, how are you, Mike?
All right, it was a wild weekend. We got Minshew Mania running wild. The Eagles got a taste of what Minshew Mania is, Mike, but I liken it to the holidays. It only happens every once in a while, and you don't want it every single week. You kind of get tired of Thanksgiving if you had Thanksgiving dinner. This is why you only hear a Minshew Mania every once in a while. It's not a weekly occurrence.
Yeah, I mean, I was up at Rutgers yesterday for the high school football games, and I listened to the Eagles-Jets game on my way up there and watched the second half kind of in the press box with a couple guys. And I thought a guy in the press box, I give him all the credit there, Mark Tribble, who worked for the Courier Post, now works for the Glory Days website, came up with the perfect analogy. We're watching the game, and he turns to me and says, you know who Minshew is? Minshew is Ryan Fitzpatrick, right? And I think that's almost the perfect analogy. He's going to have his moments. He's going to have a half a good season. He might even lead you to 10 wins like he did, like Fitzpatrick did for the Jets a couple of years ago. But is he ever going to be the guy that I think you can rely on a week in and week out basis? No. Having said that, Minshew is going to be in the league for probably 10 to 15 years, as a backup, as a 4A type of guy. But he's like a modern day Ryan Fitzpatrick to me, a Josh McCown type of guy. And those guys are going to last in the league. And it's great to have them on your team, but exactly right. Small doses, short doses, nothing long term with those guys.
So this sets up interesting. Sirianni has already said, of course, Jalen Hurts is our quarterback. Now, some people say, look, I saw enough from Minshew that he should get another start. And I would say, well, he played the Jets. Like the same people who said, well, Hurts had a monster 3-touchdown performance against the Falcons. And, of course, what did they say? Well, they only played the Falcons. So does Nick Sirianni have a legitimate decision to make here?
No, because if Hurts is healthy, Hurts has to play because you kind of know what Gardner Minshew is, right? You know what he is. You know what he's going to be going forward. He's been in the league for a while. We have an idea of what he is. We need to see Jalen Hurts continue to develop, and that's what this season is about. It's about the growth of the quarterback. It's about the growth of the coaching staff. And that's why I think you move forward with Hurts. And you made a great point because the other thing watching that game yesterday, I mean, Zach Wilson was awful. In the second half, he was terrible. There were receivers open, but the ball was behind them. It was over their heads. You're exactly right when you have to say consider who the opposition was. I mean, Zach Wilson might as well have been wearing an Eagles jersey for how well he played in the second half yesterday. So let's keep that in mind. It was the Jets. I mean, they got the kicker out of a tailgate party before the game. He misses his first 2 extra points and then he disappears. We never see him again. I mean, you're exactly right. Keep that.
He did get cut today. He did get cut today, by the way.
Absolutely. He got cut in his second quarter yesterday in reality. So
Joe Douglas walked down and cut him.
Right, exactly. Told him to go, sit next to Fireman Ed in the stands, basically. But, I mean, we know what Minshew is, and it's nice to have that in your back pocket, right? It's great to have, but we got to see Hurts play and continue to develop, and you can't waste games, playing Minshew here.
There's a lot. Minshew, by the way, like the touchdown pass to Goddard, it was severely underthrown. Goddard was just so open that he was able to stop, catch the ball, and still no one was near him. Both touchdown passes to Goddard were a little underthrown. I mean, hey, look, he had some good throws, but let's not act like he was hitting guys in stride, leading them to touchdowns. That being said, you mentioned you got to see what Hurts is. But does Minshew give this team in 2021 the best chance to win now? Now that you're 6-7 and you're there, do you reevaluate what your team's goals are now?
No, because I think it's still about development. And look, I'm a guy win every game, get in the playoffs, and I think it would be great for this team to get in the playoffs. But I don't think anybody's fooling themselves. These people calling from Minshew and not wanting to see Hurts play. Do you really think that Minshew, is going to get you in the playoffs, and then he's going to go on the road and win 3 playoff games on the road, and you're going to go on some sort of magical run to the Super Bowl? That we all know that's not happening. So let Hurts play. Hurts got you to this position. Let him get every advantage of every game. I'm all in. I'm all in on winning. I'm all in on being the 6th seed. I'm all in on making the playoffs. But we know deep down in our hearts that neither Minshew or Hurts is leading the Eagles to 3 straight road wins in the playoffs. So let Hurts get the experience, and let's see what he is, and let him to continue to develop as he has this season. Yay. Did he have a bad game against the Giants? Yeah. Quarterbacks are not going to play 17 great games. Brady has a bad game. Lamar Jackson of the Baltimore Ravens is going through a terrible streak right now. Things happen in football. Let's see what Hurts is. We know what Minshew is. It's great to have him in our back pocket as a sort of insurance policy, but let's see if Hurts can get the job done.
Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. So the Eagles 6-7, they beat the Jets yesterday. Did we learn anything about this team moving forward? I mean, are they any different than the team we saw against the Giants 2 weeks ago? Or did kind of getting off the mat after that Giants win tell you something else about them?
Now we know we know what we have learned about them all season, that this team is capable of beating bad teams with bad quarterbacks. They've done it consistently all season long. They wallop the Lions. They beat the Jets. They win games against bad teams with bad quarterbacks, which is a positive sign because there are a lot of NFL teams out there that don't win games against bad quarterbacks and beat bad teams. So to me, that's one of the positives of the season. And I know people kind of will say, well, that's no big deal. But to me, it is a big deal. When you go into a game and you think the Eagles should win this game, home or on the road against a bad team, they win the game. And I think that's what we know about them right now. And that's a step. That's a positive sign to me.
All right, Mike McGarry, we got Giants lose yesterday, by the way. I guess
unwatchable.
Well, I would say the Eagles-Jets game was unwatchable. That was bad football yesterday, but this is what the league is. It's a lot of mediocre and bad teams that just get matched up week after week. They win, they lose, they win, they lose. They keep everybody involved. But that loss yesterday may have knocked the Giants finally kind of out of they're in this discussion.
Yeah, the Giants are done. Who knows? Daniel Jones's health is an issue. I mean, Joe Judge is sinking. Every Sunday just continues to not help his case. Gettleman is probably gone, and they are unwatchable from an entertainment factor. I know what you're saying about some bad teams playing like that, but sometimes bad teams can get together and play an entertaining game. The Giants are just unwatchable television right now from a Sunday perspective. It's a shame that game has to be on TV for 3 hours and you can't get something else because it's completely unwatchable.
4-8 the Giants are. The Washington football team, they come back, they win that game. I was watching that game and I'm like, come on, Raiders, and they couldn't get the job done. 4 in a row for the Washington football team. They got 2 against Dallas, 2 against Philly, and they play the Giants. Or the Washington football team for real?
I think they are for as real as they can be. I don't think they're booking the reservations for SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles in a couple of weeks. But I thought going into the season that the Redskins were one of the maybe the pick to win the division. I thought they were going to win the division with that defense and some of their offensive guys, and it's taken them a while, and they've kind of hit strides. I mean, the running back Gibbs is playing nice. The quarterback does what the quarterback does, and I know the guy from Ohio State, the big lineman Chase Young, is out, but the defense is still good. They're winning games 17-15, and it's all right in front of them, right? They got 5 division games left. And we'll see what happens going forward. But I do think Washington is a team to watch. I think that was a nice win yesterday on the road in Las Vegas.
Oh, yeah. That one makes it interesting. By the way, the Eagles and Washington play each other twice And Washington has all division games left. Philadelphia has all division games left. Could we get 3 NFC East teams in the playoffs?
Yeah, I don't think you're going to get 3 just because they're all playing each other. I think one of them is going to end up getting beat up there. But the fact that we're even talking about like the second week of December, 3 NFC East teams making the playoffs, I don't know whether that's a statement of the NFC East or a statement that tells you how bad the NFC is. But I don't think it's going to happen. I think you're going to get 2. But I think they're just that third team is just not because they're playing each other. I think that third team is going to end up with too many losses to basically get in. But I shake my head at the thought of 3 NFC East teams. Not exactly Gibbs, Parcells, and Buddy Ryan and Tom Landry division days.
All right, Mike McGarry, we had 2 amazing high school football games. Where would you rank these? Give us a quick overview of what you saw, and where would you rank these in the pantheon of your illustrious coverage?
Well, I thought the Saturday night game was one of the best games I've ever seen, which I tweeted out. That was Cedar Creek 35-34 over Woodrow Wilson. Just a fantastic game. Cedar Creek falls behind 22-0. Mike, Cedar Creek runs 5 offensive plays. Their first 5 offensive plays, they turn it over 3 times. They're down 22-0. 4 minutes into the game. The only thing Cedar Creek did right in that first 4 minutes was screw up so much and so early. They gave themselves the rest of the game. They gave themselves plenty of time to get back into it, which they did. We had a video review. The game came down to being decided by 6 inches. Cedar Creek tackles a Woodrow Wilson guy short of the goal line by 6 inches. You got everybody in SoFi Stadium watching the video review, the Wilson people cheering, the Creek people cheering. Just a great atmosphere, a great scene, and a tremendous game.
What was the call on the field?
The call on the field was that he did not get in. The call on the field was that he did not get in. It was a swing pass to the running back, CJ Resto, a linebacker, tackles the Woodrow Wilson ball carrier like 6 inches short of the goal line. At the time, it's 35-34. There's 10 seconds left, so that's the game. And then we had about a 2 to 3 minute video review that confirmed the call on the field.
Did they get it right?
I think they did. I think in looking at it to my naked eye, and I was standing 10 feet away in the back of the end zone, I thought the Woodrow Wilson kid got in originally. But on looking at the video review, I think his back leg, his back shin hit the ground, and it didn't hit it by much, but I think it hit it. And that's the case. I think the shin of his back leg got down before the ball broke the plate. And the official was right there. There was nobody closer to the play than the official. He was right on it.
All right. So that was Saturday night. Cedar Creek wins. And then last night you have Millville. They had a come from behind as well.
Yeah, Millville 45-35 win over Winslow Township. We knew it was going to be a lot of points and a lot of offense, and the team had over 800 yards of offense. 35-35 late in the game, and Millville just turns to LaQuint Allen. The kid carries 40 times, Mike, 40 times for 240 yards, and he's also playing defense. Let's keep in mind, remind people out there, this isn't the NFL. They're not on the sidelines when the defense is on the field. So Allen is carries the ball 40 times, catches 4 passes, breaks up a pass, makes 4 or 5 tackles. Just a remarkable performance, and Millville outlasts Winslow Township 45-35 in the last high school football game played in the state of New Jersey this season.
Wild endings for both of those games. 2 regional champions, Millville, Cedar Creek, those great communities getting to enjoy. They're the only 2 teams in the area, really. I guess some teams that won on Thanksgiving, Holy Spirit, Ocean City, that won their final games of the season.
Right.
But there you go. All right, Mike McGarry's back on Wednesday. He's going to go get some more Minshew mania the next couple of days.
All right.
I'll talk to you, man.
Enough. See you later.
All right, there's Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. Nick Sirianni addressing the media. He's no doubt answering questions about Minshew mania and more. We'll have that for you coming up right after Grayson's grades, which are on the other side here on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN. Mike McGarry's appearance on the Sports Bash on Monday is brought to you by Calvi Electric, offering residential services for your home and business online at calvielectric.com. Don't forget, coming up at 3:40 today, you'll hear from Kevin Durso. Actually, we'll have the Sirianni presser after Grayson's grades. We'll see what we can do with Durso. Maybe we'll do something in the 4 o'clock hour with Durso. Alain Vigneault has been fired by the Flyers. He finishes 74, 54, and 19 in parts of 3 seasons for the Fly Guys. So I'll reset the hour coming up next here on the Sports Bash. All right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. Nick Sirianni's presser is coming up in just a few moments here. First, Grayson's grades. I'm sure Sirianni getting grilled about the quarterback position. I'm sure his answer is what you would expect. I would expect that he would say, and I haven't heard this yet, but that Jalen Hurts will be his starter moving forward. But Gardner Minshew obviously has people out there wondering, hey, why not Gardner Minshew again? Well, we'll get into that with Grayson's grades. Grayson's grades are back right here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN as Scott Grayson joins us here for another edition of his grades, which are posted right now at 97.3 ESPN.com. Scott Grayson, what's up, man?
Hey, well, how you doing, Mike? Nice win yesterday, huh?
It was a nice win, and obviously it wouldn't be Philadelphia if the nice win didn't have controversy surrounding it. You had a little taste of Minshew Mania. The Eagles fans got to feel what Minshew Mania is all about, and I guess we'll start with him in the game that he played. Obviously, he did a great job yesterday, and I would imagine that you were impressed, by what you saw from Gardner Minshew. Hard not to be.
Yeah, hard not to be. I was mildly impressed, is what I'll say. I think they gave him a very easy game plan to succeed with. I mean, quite frankly, a lot of his throws I didn't think were difficult throws. That's not to take away the fact that he gave his receivers a chance to make some plays. And the balls he threw to Dallas Goedert, one was a little underthrown, but Goddard made some really good plays on those throws. And I just thought that, it's easy to see the shiny new toy going down the field in Gardner Minshew and think, well, this guy is something special. And quite frankly, look, I don't want to take anything away from the game he played, but to me, it's the Jets. It was not hard throws to make. The biggest thing that I liked was he knew when to throw the ball on the ground. He was 14 for 14, and he threw a ball on the ground for his first incompletion of the game rather than try to force something in there to keep that streak going. That's a veteran move. That's a guy who's been in the league and understands the value of an incomplete pass versus what Jalen Hurts, frankly, did a week earlier and tried to fit the ball into some bad spaces. So, look, Minshew did some good things. I think he had this team moving. He had the team. His personality is hard not to like. I mean, he had these guys laughing in the huddle. They talked about that after the game. He was telling jokes. He's fired up on the sideline. The mustache, the whole thing. It's all there for you to see. And he had the bomber jacket on. I mean, he was playing the whole thing up. He was living it up for 1 week, and it was great. And I think the Eagles saw, look, right now they have a really good backup quarterback. They have a guy who can do the job. But that one game against the Jets does not lead me to say he definitely needs to be the starter against Washington unless Jalen Hurts is not ready to play.
Right. You gave him an A, obviously, in the grade yesterday, but you gave a couple other guys A's around him. And let's talk about that because the one that you brought up, and I'm glad you did, Minshew, he was perfect at the start. He was 11 for 11 or something like that. First half, he's one of 4 quarterbacks in Eagles history to have a perfect quarterback rating in the first half of a game. But you're right. Some throws were underthrown. I mean, the touchdown pass to Goddard has to stop, wait for the ball. There's just nobody near him. If Jalen Hurts makes that throw, well, he doesn't have a strong enough arm. He underthrew him. Everybody seems ready to say, I'm ready to watch more Minshew. But the caveat of, but they played the Jets doesn't seem to follow it. If Hurts has a big game like he did against Atlanta, well, they only played the Falcons. So it seems that they're willing to accept Minshew, but not willing to accept Hurts.
Yeah, Mike, I think once again, you and I are seeing this pretty close to eye, and pretty much the same way. Look, I just didn't see arm strength yesterday out of Minshew. I did not see him once really fire the ball in somewhere and put some zip on the ball. Maybe that's why Jalen Reagor was able to catch it a couple of times. But, when you see what Dallas Goedert had to do, he did have to slow up. Had he led him, he wouldn't have had to break a tackle to make that touchdown. And the ball to Devontae Smith, I give Minshew credit. He threw a ball up for Devontae Smith to go up and try to make a play. That I liked. You gave a guy a chance to make a play, and you trusted him to do it. It was a pretty well-thrown ball, too. Like I said, Minshew did some good things, but Dallas Goedert was featured in the game plan. You saw Nick Sirianni learn from his mistakes from a week before where Jalen Reagor was the most targeted receiver on the field, and Dallas Goedert had 1 catch for 0 yards. Clearly, Goedert was a big part of the game plan. And I loved seeing that. I think you've got to get that guy involved early in every game, just to show the defense that he is part of the game plan, and we're going to continue to pepper it to him. And I just love how he can break tackles. I loved what Zach Ertz did here. But we know, his nickname was No Yak Zach. And Dallas Goedert has shown that he can catch a ball and tack some yards on after the catch as well. And I think that's a really nice feature to have. So the biggest thing I learned yesterday is, look, good on Sirianni to get Dallas Goedert involved early and often. And, I think that just showed that Sirianni's learning as well.
I tweeted that out yesterday, that Goedert, forget the pass that Minshew threw. Goddard broke a couple tackles on the first down catch and the touchdown that
right.
Ertz probably doesn't break. I said, hey, I liked Ertz. He was a great player here, but he probably doesn't break a lot of those tackles. You gave Goddard an A, obviously deserving. He had 6 catches, over 100 yards, the 2 touchdowns, but the element that he adds to this offense, and I just don't understand why they don't make him a bigger part of the offense, is bewildering to me. And I don't know if that was Sirianni, that game plan to have him a bigger part of the offense, or, the backup quarterback's best friend typically is the tight end. Hey, that's the safe guy. Was that a result of Minshew playing the position?
Minshew was asked, is, Goddard someone you've thrown the ball to frequently in practice, and that's where that kind of chemistry developed. And he admitted, he's like, I haven't really had snaps with the ones, so this was really the first time I've thrown the ball to Dallas. So I think it was just, more than anything else, I think it was he saw the mismatches on the field. He saw Goddard was an easy target to throw to. He's seen his hands throughout the weeks. What it showed me was that Minshew's a guy who's been watching, and he has been seeing what Goddard is capable of doing. And I think that's largely what that was. He saw a guy who he could throw the ball to make a catch, and he threw him the ball. He didn't hesitate. He just let him go make a play. I would have liked to have seen, like I said, a couple of those passes have a little bit more zip on them and lead Goddard a little more, but props to Dallas Goedert. He's showing every bit of the reason why he got the extension he did this season, and he earned it yesterday for sure.
Obviously, the offensive line always continuously gets an A, but they did it on both sides. I thought that Minshew had a lot of time, stood in the pocket. I thought he had good pocket presence, so I'll give him that too. The line played great there, but then they were opening up pathways. The Jets are awful defensively, but they're really bad against the run.
Yeah, they are. And again, credit to this offensive line. I mean, when you stop and you say it out loud and you listen to it, 175 yards or more rushing in 6 straight games. I mean, that's crazy. That is, in every word, by football logic, dominating the line of scrimmage. And those guys are doing it. This team is relying on it. These running backs it's been a different back at different times, and Miles Sanders was finally the first one to go over 100 yards. But I was curious yesterday, without the threat of Jalen Hurts running the ball, would the running game still be as effective? And what it showed me was that it's not necessarily Jalen Hurts, at least yesterday, that's driving the running game. Certainly his threat and the fear of him running the ball does factor in. But this offensive line has been every bit dominating the opponent and opening up the holes, as you mentioned, in these running backs. Miles Sanders, to me, does not look like he's dancing as much as he did before his injury. He's hitting these holes that he's seeing, and he's taking what he's getting. Averaged 5 yards per carry yesterday. Kenny Gainwell did his job as well. I mean, it didn't matter who was running the ball, whether it was him, Sanders, or Gainwell. They both were very productive. And I think that shows you that this offensive line and this left side, I mean, Jordan Mailata and Landon Dickerson, to me, those guys are a lot of fun to watch. They're really, really consistent. They're playing well. And, of course, the biggest question mark now everybody holds their breath about is Jason Kelce, because, man, when he's not in there, it is brutal.
Yeah, it did sound today as if they were optimistic that it's not a long-term situation. No timetable on Kelce, but it doesn't sound like any season-ending situation for him. That was Nick Sirianni. You'll hear his press conference coming up shortly, right after Grayson's grades here. Let's look at a couple of the other grades that stand out to me. Marcus Epps, you gave him a B, and he's a guy that, I don't think a lot of people really, heard much about. You mentioned what he did, but he also saved a touchdown on the opening kickoff, too. So it shows you, the awareness and the smarts that this kid has.
Yeah, I like what I'm seeing. I feel like he's growing. I think he's growing pretty well, and I'm starting to feel like he may have more of a role down the future here with this team. He saved a couple touchdowns because there was another play later in the game. The receiver caught the ball around the 3-4 yard line. He came up and popped him, and just I think it was Freeman, and he stopped him. Where he was the only guy that could have and kept him out of the end zone, and I like that play. That was a heady play. It was a good hard hit from a defensive back. You add in obviously the interception. You talked about the other on the kick return to open the game. He at least was back there to make them have to earn that touchdown rather than continue to pour it in. But on the return, and so I am seeing some good things out of Epps. His awareness on the field seems to be better. He seems like, you hear these guys always talk about the speed of the game, and when they start to play better, it's the game is slowing down. Epps is a guy who's starting to look to me like the game is slowing down for him, and that's a good thing. I think that's going to be very good for the Eagles too as they go down this stretch run.
A couple other guys. Now, you gave John Gannon a D, and I'm interested there. Obviously, the first half, I would say, yes, deserving. Second half, it's interesting because they didn't give up any points, but they also had the ball the entire third quarter. So John Gannon, D in this game.
Look, I was really frustrated that first half. And I knew when I submitted this grade that if there was one grade that people were going to look at and maybe not, really agree with, it was that one. That maybe I was too harsh on him. It was partly because I was having flashbacks to the bad games the Eagles have played defensively earlier this season. I felt like the cushion was way too big. I felt like they were just letting Wilson get into a groove in that first half. And that is the worst thing you can do. They showed they had the ability later in the game to get to the quarterback. And, I think more than anything else, you pointed it out, the Eagles had the ball for so long between the end of the first half and the beginning of the second half that the Jets went something like over an hour in real time without touching the ball. That is how you get a quarterback out of rhythm. I give all the credit to the Eagles offense for getting the Jets offense out of rhythm more than I did the defense. Now, the defense made plays in the second half. We talked about the Epps interception. Josh Sweat had a sack. Clearly Wilson was not the same. They did make a couple adjustments, but they were still – it was a 15-point game, Mike, in the fourth quarter. And I was sitting there watching the cushion they were giving these receivers thinking they're starting to let Wilson make some completions, and this team's starting to move the ball. And that's when the interception happened. And I thought, wow, okay, that was a big play at a big time because I felt like the Jets were starting to get into that rhythm again. And quite frankly, I am so frustrated with how passive Gannon calls a game. The Eagles offense really, bailed out the defense in that first half repeatedly. I don't blame the defense on the first touchdown. An 81-yard kick return, that's on special teams. That touchdown was on them. That's a tough spot for the defense to start in, but I'm really questioning whether or not this team can, if they do get in the playoffs, pull up a chance to win an upset over a good quarterback and a good team playing a passive defense like they play more often than not. And it's really frustrating. I'm tired of seeing it from Gannon. And I felt like the offense shut down the Jets offense by keeping them off the field more than the defense did in the second half.
Scott Grayson's grades are posted right now at 973ESPN.com. Obviously, Nick Sirianni said yesterday, of course, Jalen Hurts is the quarterback. Number one, do you believe him? And number two, does Gardner Minshew deserve another opportunity to play after that? Does he give them the best chance to make the playoffs?
It's a great question, but, I think Nick Sirianni's playing this by the textbook way to play this as a head coach. Your starter's the starter until he's not the starter. And he's the starter right now, Jalen Hurts, until he's not healthy enough to be the starter. He wasn't healthy enough to be the starter this past week. Did Gardner Minshew light the world on fire? No. Did he manage the game well? Yeah. Did he do enough to help this team win? Yes. And as we said, it was against the Jets. But has he earned a start against Washington in a must-win game 2 weeks from now? Look, if Jalen Hurts is remotely healthy, I'm starting Jalen Hurts. There's no doubt about it because Gardner Minshew has one win over the Jets. It was a decent performance, but Jalen Hurts has, 5 other wins this season. And a lot of the ones they've been on this winning streak, he has been the starting quarterback. This offense and this offensive line and this running game, I know it did perform yesterday, but what would it have gained had Jalen Hurts been in? I'm not anti-Minshew. I'm just still saying you need to find out if Jalen Hurts is your guy next year, and you need to take advantage of these 4 games to show you that for sure. I think Minshew has shown you that he is serviceable and ready to take over if needed.
Yeah.
But to me, I don't even care if Jalen Hurts is 100%. If he's 80% or better, he's starting.
I'll tell you this. You didn't include this guy in your grades, but maybe for 1 week, Howie Roseman should get an A. He makes the trade to get Minshew for a 6th-round pick, which allows him to trade Flacco to the Jets, who didn't even play yesterday, to get back possibly a 5th-round pick. And we always say, Scott, good teams have good backup quarterbacks. So are the Eagles a good team or are they a smart team? It's something that Eagle fans don't want to say either way. They don't want to give Roseman credit, but they made a smart move to go get a cheap quarterback and bring him in here, and he helped win them a game. If they make the playoffs, that one game that he won, you might look back at that and say, that was a smart move.
No, it was a smart move. I think everybody would agree that Minshew is probably an upgrade over Joe Flacco. And so I think that you look at what Minshew did, and I think you give credit to Howie Roseman for the trade. You're right. He basically got Minshew for nothing in the end. And I think it is an upgrade over Joe Flacco, and I think Howie does deserve credit for that. We've talked about it, and I've been able to give Howie some credit. Landon Dickerson, huge draft pick. Jordan Mailata has turned out to be a huge draft pick. Jalen Reagor has, I think we can all agree, been a huge miss. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, that's a huge miss. So there's definitely, it's a mixed bag. And, for all GMs, you can pretty much run down the line. You have to hit more than you miss. And I think Howie's probably batting about 50% right now, which, it needs to up that a little bit more. But he's made some good moves lately for sure.
Oh, there's no question about the fact that there's misses in there. And you saw, why did Reagor get more snaps than Smith yesterday?
I can't figure this out. I really can't. It's almost like they're trying to shove Jalen Reagor down our throats. Like, look at what he can do. Well, what I saw was him misplay a kickoff. He muffed a punt, and he got lucky enough to return it for something else.
They finally took him off the kickoff returns.
Yeah, they did. And it's like, I just feel like he's being forced into action right now, and I see so many similarities in body language from Jalen Reagor to what Nelson Aguilar was, where he was when he was here before he left. There's a lack of confidence. There's doubt in the player, in himself. And why you continue to throw that guy out there rather than give him a break, let him watch some things from the sideline and just tell him, I'm not benching you here, but I want you to take a mental break this week. He's getting one by the bye, but that's not helping him watch some plays unfold on the field. And yeah, why did he get more snaps than Devontae Smith? Boggles my mind. There's some things going on over there, and you wonder, is that coming down from the front office, or is I think they might have been looking to give. I think Devontae Smith might be in some way slightly banged up and not saying it, and they're not reporting it, and they were looking to get him less snaps going into a bye to get him, almost 2 weeks of rest. That's what I think happened.
Scott Grayson's grades are posted right now at 973ESPN.com. Check them out. And, of course, by the way, I did hear you yesterday during the locker room, and your prediction was 34-10. So you did say, I did hear you say you thought it was going to be a blowout. Me and you were about lockstep there. I had 31-17 in my game balls, Scott Grayson. I had Dallas Goedert and TJ Edwards were my 2 game balls.
Oh, wow. Yeah, so you did a good job.
Edwards had 11 tackles to lead the team. Goddard had a pretty big day, 31-17. So you thought it was a blowout. I thought it was a blowout. And we got a week to 2 weeks, I should say, to let it all simmer. And the Washington football team, they are the 6th seed right now in the NFC race. The Eagles are 8, just a half game behind. They will be no worse than 1 game out when the 2 teams meet up 2 Sundays from now in South Philadelphia. Scott Grayson's on Fox 29. You can check him out, of course, during Props and Locks and right here for Grayson's Grades. Scotty Grayson, good to see you, pal.
All right, you too, Mike. Thanks a lot.
S. Grayson, Fox 29 is where you can find him on Twitter. And, of course, you can watch him on Fox 29 television with all the Philadelphia sports news and, of course, Grayson's Grades right here on the Sports Special. All right, when we come back, Nick Sirianni, you will hear what the head coach has to say about the win, the quarterback position, the injuries, and more as we carry the Nick Sirianni Day After Presser right here on the Sports Bash. Plus, Alain Vigneault fired. The details, why, what's next, who are the candidates. Durso joins me in just a bit here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Grayson's Grays are brought to you by Boardwalk Honda. From Maine to Miami, nobody beats the Boardwalk deal. Online, boardwalkhonda.com. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. Nick Sirianni's Day After Presser. It's brought to you by Deborah Heart and Lung Center. When it's your heart, you don't take chances. Be sure demanddeborah.org. You'll hear what the Eagles head coach has to say. When we come back, we'll react. And then next hour, football at 4, Jeff Mosher, Kevin Durso on the Flyers firing Alain Vigneault. Casey Joyner tonight at 5 with one thought on every game, the NFC East look with Jeff Kerr. So stick around for all that right here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. I'm Mike Gill. Here is the Eagles head coach, Nick Sirianni, after their win 6-7, 33-18. They beat the Jets. All right, there's Nick Sirianni, the Philadelphia Eagles head coach, gets to 6-7 on the season. Think about this. Nick Sirianni, 6-7. He's a half game out of a playoff spot, playing meaningful games in December. Nobody heard of this guy. Nobody knew who this guy was when the Eagles hired him. And now they're playing meaningful football games. How many people out there thought the Eagles would be playing meaningful football games this season in December? Don't lie. None of you did. You know who did? Yours truly. Sports Bash is live on 97.3 ESPN. Hey, I said I thought this team could be a playoff team if the offensive line stayed healthy. What has happened? This offensive line has stayed healthy pretty much the whole year. They lost, and I even said this. They can afford to lose one guy, maybe two. Can't do what you did last year, though. But they lost Brandon Brooks early in the year and then replaced him right away. And then they got Landon Dickerson in the second round. They lost Sayamala, and they're actually better at left guard than they probably were. Dickerson's probably a better player than Sayamala is, and Sayamala was playing pretty well. All right, more reaction to Nick Sirianni's press conference. He said something that stands out to me regarding Dickerson. Back with that next. All right, so we just heard from Nick Sirianni there, the Nick Sirianni press conference here on the Sports Bash, brought to you by Matt Blatt Nissan, the all-new Matt Blatt Nissan. Now open, Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township, next to Home Depot, online, mattblattnissan.com. Football at 4 next hour. He did say something that kind of stands out in regards to the rookie. Somebody asked about the rookies hitting the wall. He said Dickerson's not really a rookie anymore for where they are in the season, which I guess that means you can't use the excuse of this guy being a rookie. A lot about he's having a really good season, but he is still a rookie, and it just magnifies how good of a draft pick that he was. Look, they really hit with two guys in this draft, Smith and Dickerson so far. Those two guys have been outstanding. And it's a big reason their offensive line play. I said it on the other side of the break that this Eagles team could be successful if their offensive line stays together. And they haven't had the problems on the offensive line that they have this particular season, or last particular season, I should say. All right, when we come back, we'll get Mosher's take on the game. What does it mean, Minshew Mania? Will we see Gardner Minshew again, or is this a one-and-done situation? Did Nick Sirianni really say anything today? No, regarding it. He wasn't really asked about it, but he did say yesterday, who's the quarterback? He said, of course, Jalen Hurts is the quarterback. Injury issues, seemingly you have dodged a bullet there. So stick around. We got football at 4 on the other side. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. You're listening to 97.3 ESPN, your home for Eagles football, and your only place to hear Eagles-Washington football team, December 19th. Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it is brought to you locally today by Caesars Entertainment Group of Atlantic City. Come experience the ultimate sports destinations all season long. Wild Wild West, Tropicana, Harrah's Atlantic City. Book your game day experience today at Caesars.com. It's the day he's been waiting for all season long. The Mosher Monday Football at 4 edition, where he gets to recap Minshew Mania. We got a taste of Minshew Mania. How did it feel? How does the Minshew Mania feel, Mosher?
It felt like an Eagles 33-18 win. That's how it felt. I tell you what, it felt a whole lot better for Gardner Minshew and his dad than it probably felt for me or anybody else. So.
That video was great. I mean, I think he literally it would have put his father in cardiac arrest as hard as he was pushing him. Obviously, he's an excitable guy. I mean, you heard afterwards Dallas Goedert said he's a character. Miles Sanders said the same thing. It's very similar to when Hurts played last year, and the players are like, what a leader he is.
Yep.
That stands out. And it sounds like, look, the Eagles have two very popular quarterbacks.
Yes. What's the expression? If you have two very popular quarterbacks, you don't have any. No, I'm just kidding. They do. Listen, both guys are good leaders in their own right. Both guys have some personality. And I think it's good that they have Gardner Minshew to be a backup. And he came in a situation where they needed him, and it worked out really well. The offense looked good. And that's ideally what the Eagles had in mind. They are very honest about how they treat the quarterback position differently. And if they can get great value, especially at the backup spot, they'll go for it. And that's why they felt comfortable trading a 6th-round pick for him, and why they felt comfortable trading away Joe Flacco for him. To make him the backup, I mean.
Obviously, Minshew played well, 20-25. He had a perfect quarterback rating in the first half.
Mm-hmm.
Are people blowing how well he played out of proportion? I mean, you watch the tape and say, well, I'm going just off of memory here. I don't have my stuff in front of me, but the first touchdown pass to Goddard, I mean, he's underthrown severely. If Hurts makes that throw, he doesn't have a strong enough arm. Minshew makes it, it's a touchdown, and this guy has to play. Did the numbers tell the story of how well Minshew played?
No, I don't think the numbers tell the story, although some of them do. I mean, if you're just looking at completion percentage and passer rating, no, they don't tell a full story. You're correct. There were a lot of underthrown passes. I think the number that tells the story is that, what did he have? 20 completions. I think 14 of them went to tight ends and running backs. So that's 70% of his completions were sort of schemed type of plays, and mostly kind of dump offs or screens. I mean, the Eagles ran a ton of screens. So as you mentioned, with being fair, right? When Jalen Hurts underthrows passes, or when Jalen Hurts doesn't see the field, or when Jalen Hurts, remember earlier in the year, even when he was completing passes, it was like, well, this is kind of a college-y offense. Well, a lot of those passes he was making yesterday were one read or no read. A screen is a no read play type of plays. And there's nothing to take away from him in that. He did his job, but there's also no reason to look at it and think that he did something so ridiculously amazing that it's got to be more than just a really good job as a backup quarterback.
Right. I mean, it's very, it's funny because, and look, I like Minshew. I think he is a great asset to have. In fact, it's something, this is all encompassing of where this organization is. Roseman makes a smart, savvy move to go get a backup quarterback who helps you win a game. No one wants to say that's a smart move by Roseman because people don't like Roseman. So they want him to be the starting quarterback, which is interesting because when Hurts plays well, it was only against Atlanta. Nobody seems to care that Minshew just beat a really bad Jets team. But the same people who say it was only against Atlanta are the same people who say this team, playoffs, what are you talking about? Now they're saying, well, this guy gives you the best chance to make the playoffs, without saying, well, they just beat Atlanta, and I was the same guy 3 weeks ago telling you they had no shot of making the playoffs. Like, all of the hypocrisy is rolling into Minshew Mania all right here.
Well, I mean, there's no flip-flop like flip or flopadelphia. I mean, it's truly the case. The backup quarterback is always the most, for some reason, I think it's I wonder if it's generational. I feel like older guys like you and I can see this for what it is. Younger people who are more into immediate gratification and haven't lived through AJ Feely and Coy Detmer and Jeff Garcia, and didn't learn their lesson from Nick Foles, don't understand that so it's funny. I had this discussion with Adam about Kenneth Gainwell about a couple of weeks ago, where Adam Kaplan was saying, why don't they use him more? And I was saying, why don't people understand that when you have a rookie running back picked in the 5th round who didn't play last year, that having a plan for him is a good thing? Let's not get greedy. But with the backup quarterback, there's always a greed element. As soon as the backup quarterback plays well, you don't appreciate that you have a good backup quarterback, and now he has to become the starting quarterback. And the best point you make about the Atlanta game is that Jalen Hurts was great against Atlanta. He had 7 straight scoring drives against Atlanta, just like Gardner Minshew had 7 straight scoring drives against the Jets before they finally punted there. It seems like the lack of tape on Gardner Minshew in the Eagles offense is the best argument for the Minshew apologists right now, because Mike, and I've heard you talking about this today about how people flip-flop, right? If Gardner Minshew was the starting quarterback, as soon as he lost a game, whether it's Washington, New York, whatever, as soon as the pressure got to him, as soon as he threw anything that would happen that's bad, and he lost a game, the same people who are calling for him now would be like, get me Jalen Hurts back on that team. Because I know this because the same people who don't want Jalen Hurts to go forward 2 weeks ago after he beat the Broncos and the Saints were calling him a franchise quarterback until the Giants lost.
Well, look, yeah, it's funny because Hurts has had 4 games of over 100 quarterback rating. One, he had a game of 94 quarterback. He's played some good games. Now, some of the games that he played well in, they didn't win. Their defense was so bad in those games that he just didn't have a shot to win. Now, has he been great? No. Here's the thing. I described it like this, Moshe. Minshew Mania is like a holiday. It happens every once in a while, but you don't like what happens in between. The holiday season's fun, but the days leading up to the holiday, there's a lot of stress and getting ready for the holidays. We only hear about Minshew Mania every once in a while because it only comes out every once in a while. He was 1-7 in Jacksonville for a reason. I like him. He's a great asset as your backup, but it's like Fitz magic. It happens every once in a while. It always seems to be against your team, but the other games when you don't see him, they're not so good. So I think the Eagles have an interesting conundrum here is the problem is they don't have a quarterback that's so good that the answer is definitive. There's the issue.
That is absolutely the issue. You're right that there is an element of Fitz magic, Foles magic, whatever Jeff Garcia brought to the team in 2006. But you'll realize no matter how successful Jeff Garcia was, the organization was not going back to him because it had Donovan McNabb. And that's the type of quarterback an organization's always going to prioritize. Now, the Eagles don't have right now a Donovan McNabb, a guy that they pick number 2 who's no doubt about it franchise. But I would have to ask people, because it seems like perspective has been varied as the season's gone on, what was the point of this year? Was the point of this year to make the playoffs at all costs, or was the point of this year to see if Jalen Hurts was the quarterback that could lead you into the playoffs and you can build around? Because real quick, you could just be the Chicago Bears of last year. Remember, they started off with Trubisky. They benched him and went to Foles. Then they went Foles and went back to Trubisky. And then they made the playoffs as the 8th seed, got their rear ends kicked in the first round, and yada, yada. They're on a new quarterback this year, and they're not very good. You can do that with Minshew and Hurts, then Minshew, then Hurts. Go make the playoffs. Maybe if Minshew wins you a game or 2 here over the stretch, go get your ass kicked by the Packers in the first round. And then what do you got in the offseason? So to me, I thought this was an evaluation year on, is Jalen Hurts good enough to take us to the playoffs this year and be that guy that we can continue to see his improvement going forward?
Well, it's so funny because, these people were like, playoffs, this team's not a playoff team. Are you out of your mind? You're cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Because, look, I've been one guy all year essentially saying this team's probably going to be in the playoff mix all year long. You're nuts. You're out of your mind. Blah, blah. Do you watch how bad the league is? It's not like the Eagles are good. They're now saying this guy gives me the best chance of making the playoffs. Gardner Minshew gives you the best chance. You made a great observation, Moshe. However many of his completions did he have, they were to Goddard or running backs. Smith was just not involved in the game yesterday for whatever reason. Rieger, again, of course, not involved. Watkins had a couple of plays, but the wide receivers were not a part of this. This was a very safe offense yesterday.
Yes, perfectly. And there's nothing wrong with that. It was the perfect screen. I mean, obviously, the Jets can't defend the screen. They're very slow on the interior of their defense. And then, of course, the Eagles just continue to run well and gash the opponent in the run. But Washington, you've seen the way Washington has played. I've been right about Washington all year long, by the way. I've said if there's one team that I have faith in kind of figuring it out by the end of the year, it's Washington, because they've got just too much talent across the board. And they are figuring it out. And the Giants play good defense. They stink offensively, but they don't give up a lot of points. You mean to tell me that in the next 3 games against Washington and New York that Gardner Minshew isn't going to see a lot of pressure in his face? Isn't going to see a totally different defensive front? Gardner does not put the ball down the field very well. He does not have a very strong arm. You saw that. We mentioned, he underthrew a lot of passes. Imagine if he's trying to throw off his back foot or trying to throw getting away from pressure. All right. It's not going to be pretty at times. And that's just the way it is. I mean, he's 6 feet tall on a good day. He's got average arm, and there's no reason to go to him, and because he's not the future. I've heard it said, well, maybe there's a chance he's the starter next year if Jalen Hurts isn't the guy. No, I don't think Gardner Minshew is going to be your starter next year. It's either Jalen Hurts or it's going to be a veteran quarterback that they trade for, or a kid that they draft that's going to be 6'3" or 6'4", 220 pounds, and can throw the ball 50 yards in a flick of a wrist. Because a couple of these guys that are going to be drafted do have strong arms, and they have prototype NFL bodies. Whether they're ready or not, I don't know. That's for other people to decide. But
why was Goddard had his best game, 6 for over 100, big part of the offense. Was that designed, or was that because Minshew just preferred throwing the ball to the backup to the tight end?
Well, I mean, I think it's because a little bit of all that. He's a very good tight end. The first touchdown, Minshew put it up to him. That was the play action where I think there was a blitz, right? And Minshew kind of threw it up there, and Dallas caught it between 2 defenders, and then he took a hit and kept going and got the touchdown. The second one was a scheme play. I mean, he was wide open, and frankly, he was underthrown, but he was so wide open that it didn't matter. So bam, he catches the ball and it's a touchdown. And then there were 2 screens to Dallas Goedert, right? Which was there was a team that ran a tight end screen against the Eagles, or was it the Evan Ingram one? Yeah, that was like, wow, I wish the Eagles would do that. It's kind of funny when that happened. I said, I wish the Eagles would do that for Dallas Goedert. And lo and behold, a week later, they're throwing tight end screens now. So yeah, I think that he's a big, good weapon to throw to. And when you're Gardner Minshew and you haven't had a whole lot of experience throwing to those guys, you go to that big target.
You mentioned in your observations over at InsideTheBirds.com about the first chance to really get to see Miles Sanders as, a 20 carry a guy. He went over 100 yards as the first Eagle back to do that all season long, which is wild considering how many yards they've run for in the ground. But what did you think of Sanders? He got hurt, obviously. Yeah. So that kind of put a little bit. Now, he said he thinks he's going to be ready in 2 weeks here. But did you, they're going to get Jordan Howard back possibly. We don't know about that. But the run game with Sanders as the featured back, what'd you think?
I thought it was, how can you think anything other than he did a really good job, and the running game was what really won the game for the Eagles on Sunday. They ran the ball well. They ran from under center. They ran from shotgun. He handled a heavy diet, which a lot of people said he could not do, a heavy dose of carries. He had his 21st carry in the third quarter, and that was a career high for him. And then after that, he ripped off the 34-yarder. So he got stronger as the game went on. And it's really unfortunate that he got hurt, because I know that kind of feeds into that he's brittle. But, CJ Mosley landed on his ankle. And I think any running back who's kind of nursing a sore ankle at that point is probably going to hurt when their linebacker lands right on it. But he was playing well. And I think he had 5 catches, Mike. He did not drop the ball a single time. So I know it's just one game, but it's not like it's his first career game. I think he showed you he could handle the workload and still be effective as the game went on. Remember, we always wondered why would Doug never give this guy the ball in the fourth quarter? What is it he had against Miles? Was it the ball security? Was it the durability? I don't know, but he got the ball in the third and fourth quarter a lot yesterday and did a really nice job.
Yeah, I know that a lot of people talk about Minshew and Goddard. They kind of highlighted that connection there, but they didn't do much else in the pass game there. So does that say more about who they are as a passing offense? Does that say more about Nick Sirianni as a play designer? What do you make of, hey, everybody said, hey, if you put Minshew in, possibly that will jumpstart the pass game. Didn't really happen because a lot of it, as you mentioned, safe, tight end, screen game.
I make of it like if we use common sense here, Gardner Minshew has not had a whole lot of experience throwing to these guys. He's running the scout team. He's throwing to Keyshawn Johnson and John Hightower and Deion Kane for the most part. He even said this in his press conference, it's the first week of practice that I've really thrown to Dallas Goedert. So what Nick Sirianni did was his bread and butter. We're going to run the ball, right? They ran the ball 41 times for 185 yards. And then we're going to throw safe, easy passes, screens, over the middle, intermediaries, and play action, work off play action where you suck the defense in. And I think that was a smart thing to do. I think it would have been ridiculous to come out there and spread offense and throw the ball around when the quarterback is making his first start and hasn't even thrown to these guys. So, I wasn't expecting some kind of Kansas City Chiefs-like passing game. I was expecting Nick Sirianni to rely on the run and then try to work the passing game off play action. That's what he did.
Yeah, I know that they obviously put some points on the board yesterday. 33 points they put on the board yesterday. So good outing by the offense. So let's take a look at, by the way, defense. I want to get to defense real quick. They did not play well in the first half, obviously. It was a back and forth game. The third quarter, they had the ball the whole time. They only scored 3 points. But what you make of the defense by John Gannon? I thought the game plan defensively was kind of head-scratching.
Yeah, I'm usually not very critical after a win. And there have been times this year, going back to October, where I've kind of defended Jonathan Gannon's approach because of the personnel. But he changed the personnel. He changed the scheme, which I was critical of with all the too deep. And they've been playing better lately. I don't understand not forcing the issue more in the first quarter, first half, or at all on a rookie quarterback who's been struggling. I thought it was an opportunity for them to really come after him, maybe force some early turnovers. And instead they kind of rolled out the red carpet for him to start the game. And for what the score looked like, it was a close game for the first half.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it was 18-14
they were lucky to be in the lead, really. I mean, you had 2 missed extra points by a kicker who got cut today. You know, without the 2 missed extra points, I mean, it's a 1-score game. I mean, it was right there. And look, they had a chance. They're driving late in the fourth quarter, like 7 minutes left. If they would have scored on that possession, it's a 1-score game. Who knows if your defense is not now steps up and makes a pick and kind of squashes it all. But, who knows?
Yeah, I'm surprised. And I think it still leaves some question as to who Jonathan Gannon is and what is he going to do when the quarterback gets to be Taylor Heineke, who's not great, but he's good enough. They've won 4 in a row and he's playing well. What are they going to do when it's Dak Prescott if that game means something at the end of the year? He has so far against better quarterbacks, even sometimes average quarterbacks, not forced the issue. And you just wonder if at some point he's going to pay the price again like he was earlier in the year.
Yeah. Jeff Mosher, Football at 4 from the Inside the Birds podcast. And I'm sure, let's take a look at now big picture. They're 6-7, half a game out. We do a segment where, who you're rooting for. You needed to root for Seattle, they won. You needed to root for Detroit, they won. You needed to root for Tampa, they won. Yeah. The only one that didn't win was Vegas. So that makes it an interesting conundrum, ball of wax here where you got Washington is actually the 6th seed right now. Mm-hmm. San Francisco 7, Philadelphia is 8. Philly and Washington play twice. Washington plays Dallas twice. Who do you root for in the Washington-Dallas games? You want Washington to win twice? You want them to split? You want Dallas to put them out of their misery? How do we read those games?
I don't know. I was thinking about this earlier because if you root for Washington to win twice, well, then they're going to leapfrog you if you're battling for one spot. But if you do that, then, maybe you've got a chance to catch Dallas, which is very, very unlikely, but it would be there if they lost twice to Washington. I think they have to play another good team, Dallas, coming up, if I'm not mistaken. I'll have to check the schedule, but they got one more difficult opponent, maybe is it the Chargers? Somebody in the AFC West.
Dallas
perhaps
plays the Cardinals.
Yeah, that's right. So let's say Washington beats them twice, right? In that theory, and the Cardinals beat them. Then all of a sudden you're looking at a Washington team that, you're probably only a Dallas team that you might only be a game behind by the time you go up and play them. So
it's really an odd. I said you have a chance of 3 NFC East teams making the playoffs possibly.
Yeah, that's not happening. We all know that. I don't know, but I think it's fascinating. I think week to week, you're going to have a different set of circumstances that you're probably going to be rooting for.
All right. Grow your mustache, Moshe. I'll see you Wednesday.
See you, buddy.
Football at 4, Jeff Mosher, the Inside the Birds podcast. The new podcast is out now. You can check that out wherever you listen to your podcast. And, of course, Moshe is back on Wednesday. DeCecco here on Tuesday. We got plenty more to discuss. When we come back, We'll discuss Alain Vigneault. He's fired. So what's next for the Fly Guys? Why Vigneault now? Where do they go from here? Alain Vigneault fired. The details on our website, 973ESPN.com. Plus, I have 4 names to replace him. But replacing Vigneault is not the deal. This isn't what's going to fix this team. They got much bigger fish to fry. We're going to get into that coming up next with our Flyers insider, Kevin Durso from 973ESPN.com. All right, 427 Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. This hour brought to you by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bets, take your profit. Find out how. PropSwap.com. Download the PropSwap app today. Kevin Durso covers the Flyers for 97.3 ESPN.com, and it looked like it was going to be just another miserable day down at the center. But, well, it's going to be miserable for a different reason, I would imagine, as the Flyers got bombed yesterday, 7-1. And today they made the decision that was it. Enough was enough. Alain Vigneault has been fired by the Flyers. Now, Kevin, when we talked today, you said you weren't surprised. You were just surprised on a game day they decided to do this. So tell us why today the Flyers decided to make such a move.
You know, when I was sitting there last night during the game, I couldn't help but constantly try to glance over to where the management sits just to kind of see if there's anything that you can pick up on, I guess. And I looked over there a lot, and I guess there was something going on in their heads too, because that's why. Because after watching last night's game, Chuck Fletcher said it was time. And
all right, for people who didn't see the game last night, obviously there's football on. You might have got lost in the sauce. Describe the play on the ice to where you're looking over there and saying, what am I watching here?
Well, the first 5-6 minutes were exactly what you wanted to see, because it looked like a team of desperation, a team that had 3 days off, going against a team that was playing their 5th game in 7 nights and 3rd and 4 and had played the night before, and they were winning battles. They were getting to the puck faster. They were spending a lot of time in the offensive zone. It was everything you wanted to see. And then one transition rush after Ivan Provorov couldn't keep the puck in the zone, and Tampa Bay scores a goal on a rebound. And it just snowballed from there. They got another goal a minute later. Second period comes along. They scored less than 3 minutes in. They scored again maybe about 4 minutes later. And then not long after that, the perfect solution to the problem in a 4-0 game is the Flyers get a power play. How exciting is that to watch the league's worst power play pretty much get an opportunity? And sure enough, a puck gets cleared out of the zone. It's a little bit ahead of a Tampa Bay penalty killer. And Carter Hart comes out to play the puck, turns it over. It gets weakly backhanded into the net from there, and that's when they decided to pull Carter Hart. And basically at that point, it was just a total farce at that point. I mean, it was just becoming a circus, and that is what it is. You know, I mean, like, it was to that point where you kind of realize this is the type of game that usually leads to events like we had this morning. It just felt that way. And then after the game, on top of it, Alain Vigneault was at a total loss for words. He didn't seem like he had an answer. And he, as much as he said stuff about coming back today and trying to do the best he can to right the ship, he seemed like a guy who almost looked like he was told immediately after the game, your time's done. And Claude Giroux took a long time answering a question last night also, where it was almost as if the players were told, your coach has been fired. And you kind of have to, as players in that room, you have to look at a 7-1 loss like that, total embarrassment on home ice, which we saw plenty of a year ago, and kind of wear it.
All right. So, I mean, you said it looked like the players just disinterested. This has been a streak where they have not been competitive in a lot of these games. Did they tune him out? Did they not like him? Did they not mesh with him? We've seen Alain Vigneault, a lot of these hockey coaches seem to have a short shelf life where they're there, they're successful, and then it goes crashing down pretty quickly. Where was there a disconnect? Why was Vigneault not able to connect with these players this year?
Yeah, that's a really tough question. I can't explain the shelf life of an NHL head coach, honestly. I mean, I haven't been doing this that long. I've been covering the team for 8 years, 5 for you guys, and I've seen this is going to be the 5th coach I've covered, and that's a lot in 8 years. I mean, that's the first guy. It's the first guy who goes every single time. And I was thinking about this as because I'm sure you're going to get into the list of 4 names that you had put out there on the website as well. And I was thinking about this because this team has employed 5 of the top 14 coaches in wins in NHL history, in their franchise's history, including Vigneault. And there's no rhyme or reason for why. Like that. This doesn't mean Alain Vigneault is a bad coach. He's a good coach. He's won the 8th most games in NHL history. You don't do that by accident. You've got to be a good coach to do that.
Kevin, this goes to you've just kind of laid it all out. This is the 5th coach you've hired, 5th coach you've covered in the 8 years you've been around this team. The answer is simple. This roster is the same. We talked about it last time you were on. They've rearranged the chairs, but they've brought in similar guys. They just ripped off the nameplate and put a different guy in there. The roster's the same. That's obvious and clear. This hasn't been the coach's fault in almost any of these. I mean, in any of these, where would you say maybe Dave Hackstall was a little over his head, although he's been competitive with the worst roster probably in the league.
Well, exactly. And that's why, you know, for everybody who wants to keep coming back to it, and I guess I'll dive into your list a little bit, because you put down names like John Tortorella, Claude Julien, Mike Babcock's out there. I know yesterday, prior to Vancouver making a move in similar fashion, Bruce Boudreau was out there. These are all well-known coaches around the league, obviously, but these are the coaches that you hire when you need your team. It makes me think of back to when the Flyers hired Peter Laviolette and fired John Stevens. John Stevens was the developmental type coach who had come up through the ranks, been an AHL head coach, and you got to a certain point where you looked at the roster, and that roster that year in 2010 had Chris Pronger, Kimo Timonen, Danny Briere, Simone Gagne, Scott Hartnell, like a lot of good names on it. So the coach you hire when you hire a Peter Laviolette is the team that needs a kick in the rear end to get to that contending level, to get to their full potential and be in the playoffs in May and June. That's not what you do now. You need a coach who's kind of here for the changing of the guard, because that's really what the next step is.
That's what I wrote in the article. These four names are the ones that everyone's going to hear and talk about, because in hockey, for whatever reason, there's this recycling of the hockey coach that just goes on for a couple of reasons. One, it's very non-typical to hire a college coach. You're not calling like the NFL goes to college sometimes, not often, but it's more likely in football. You don't see the guy get promoted from the minor leagues all that much either. It's typically the same crew of guys or the assistant guy who's been around or a former player. So I advocate that you've got to find that next young guy that no one's really maybe heard of and stick with this team and let him learn on the job. But I would imagine do you think they're going to hire a new coach this year, or who's taking over?
Mike Yo's taking over.
Okay, Mike Yo, who has some coaching experience.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like you're putting a green as grass guy in there. Are they going to bring someone in this year, or is he going to finish out the year? Your thoughts?
That was really an interesting point also, because the press release that was sent out said Mike Yo was going to serve as the interim head coach tonight, as if to say we have no idea who's coaching the game on Wednesday. Then Chuck Fletcher said he has not started any process of interviewing. They don't want to rush into anything. And to a degree, I understand that. You got 3 more games later this week on the road. You're not going to do anything crazy over that stretch. Like, you would probably wait until you were back home next weekend. That's still only a week down the road, so you wouldn't be kicking it down the road that far. But I just don't know if anything's going to come right away, because to me, there's not really an urgency in that sense. I mean, they're literally going to sit here and say, we're going to try to salvage this season, where they really should look forward.
We're in December. Are you telling me in December that that the organization would now declare that this season is a waste?
No, they're not going to, but I think that's probably the better message, quite honestly. I mean, they're going to try to look at Mike Yo and say, hey, this guy's been a head coach before. I mean, Chuck Fletcher's got great familiarity with him because he was a coach in Minnesota. So they're going to look at him and try to see if they can't take that voice and say, instead of being basically the third assistant down the line, because he was even behind Michel Therrien, who also got fired. So take his voice and see if that makes a difference. The thing is that this is not the team that needs a kick in the rear end to get back on track and be a contending team.
Does Chuck Fletcher, after the offseason he had, does he think this is the team that needs the kick in the butt?
He probably does. Sure. I just don't know that I see it. I mean, I just, at this point, it would be one thing if they were on a losing streak. I mean, 4 years ago, they had a 10-game losing streak, but there were more than a few games that were competitive at that point. You felt like they were getting more unlucky than playing poorly. They were just in a bad spot. They were letting leads slip away. So they were in position to win some games. They were in a position to break that streak up, and it just prolonged. And that's probably more of the reason why they were so patient pretty early on in Dave Hackstall's time still. I mean, that was year 3 for Hackstall, and they let him go through that stretch. He survived that stretch. They made the playoffs at the end of the year, which does not happen to teams that basically give away 1/8 of your season, 10 games out of 82. In this case, they basically got to a point where they said they couldn't just sit there and do nothing. But I get the sense that this is not necessarily what Chuck Fletcher really wanted to do, that this is more of the ownership group that's trying to say we should be more competitive. We should be able to right the ship and get back on track. And they're going to look at the standings and wake up this morning and go, well, they're only 7 out of a playoff spot, and I just can't go there. I look at your 8 away from the bottom or 7 away from the bottom, and there are teams behind you that are closing in on you. Most notably, Dave Haxtell's Seattle Kraken are closing in on you. Teams like the Chicago Blackhawks, who already fired their head coach this year, they're closing in on you. And a team like the New York Islanders that just have had tons of tough luck are eventually going to probably figure it out because they are too talented to not do it. And I don't like that's a team that I think is going to stand by their head coach and stand by their players and say it's just been a bad stretch. They've been on the road half the year. They had COVID. Now they'll get back and they'll take a chance on getting back on track. And to me, there's just none of those teams below them are going to do anything either that makes it an urgency to hire another head coach and try to get somebody else who another team might be interested in before the end of the year. So I think they could possibly ride this whole thing out. I don't know if that's the right call, but it's a possibility for sure.
Kevin Durso covers the Flyers, 7th in the Metropolitan Division. Just an awful skid. They got bombed last night, 7-1, 4-1 to the Rangers. Before that, 5-2 to the Devils, 6-3 to the Hurricanes, 4-0 to the Lightning, 5-2 to the Bruins. I mean, just complete non-competitiveness over the last 2 weeks. They haven't won a game, by the way, since going back to a game against Calgary Flames. I think it was like November 19th. Cam Atkinson had the game-winning goal. He finally scored last night, the first time he scored since then. But you know, all right, I gave you 4 names.
Mm-hmm.
You have are those names realistic, not realistic? Do you have names?
I mean, for me, Rick Tocchet does sound like a guy that they'd be interested in, and a guy that, to me, he makes a lot more sense than the other 3. Just
Does
because,
it, though? Is that we're going to go back down the road of bringing in the former Flyer guy to appease our fan base who right now isn't there, so we got to do something to the team stinks, so what do? We go back and find a guy. I mean, he's not a Broad Street bully, but he's like the next generation guy.
I look more at his record overall and the teams that he's coached, particularly a team like the Arizona Coyotes, who have been in the cellar for years and years and years. And he got more out of those teams sometimes than they probably should have.
They got fired in Tampa, not for performance. It was basically they had a new ownership group in there.
Right. And to me, he's the type of coach to me that lowers the like you bring in these names when they bring in Alain Vigneault, who's 8th all time in wins, and you have other guys, Tortorella's in the top 15 and Claude Julien's in the top 15. And you're bringing in somebody who the expectation to me is to win a Stanley Cup at that point, because you're bringing in a coach that's got a pedigree for being around teams that have done that or have at least contended in that way. And that's not this team. So I wouldn't bring in a guy who gives that vibe, because it sends the wrong message to me. I think you need to send a message that's kind of the other direction, which is, to me, I think that you would honestly get a whole lot more. And this is probably to answer your what's next question an awful lot. I think you would be better suited to give the message that I think people will be more willing to put up with the results, even the ones that are not so pretty right now, if that was the expectation, that you're not a good team and you're building towards something in the future, but it's going to be 3, 4, 5 years of this to get there and get that player.
What do you do then? You've got a roster with Claude Giroux, Couturier. Now, Couturier is a younger guy. He just feels like he's been here for so long. The particulars of who's been here. This same core group of guys led by Claude Giroux. What do you do with that group of guys in a year where you're like, hey, this is a lost season? I mean, who do you keep? Who do you try to convince Giroux to waive his no trade clause? Do you say, look, you see what's going on out here. Do you want to go somewhere? I mean, what do you do with this roster?
I mean, in Giroux's case, I think that's an honest conversation that just needs to be had. I don't know if they honestly have had that conversation with him to that point to say, listen, this is where we are as a franchise, and kind of thank you for your time and thank you for putting up with this. And we're really sorry that we didn't give you better in those 10, 12 years that you were one of the leaders, but this is where we are and we want you to have a shot to win. And that's what you entice him with. And if he wants to spend the rest of his career playing it out, another 5 years of things like this, then suit yourself. But I think that he wants to win. He's a competitor at heart, and you can see the frustration that if you presented him with that opportunity in a contract year, no less. And I think that this is the reason why when you had the offseason that you just had, and then you capped it off with new extension for Sean Couturier and new extension for Joel Farabee coming up. This is the reason why I don't think Claude Giroux got one, because I think that they needed to make sure it was going to be worth his while to sign long-term again one more time before making such a deal. And that's why I think both sides agreed. Let's let the season play out and see what happens. And here's where you are. And he's not going to quit. I'll tell you that much. He'll do his part to try to make it as good as possible and to see if they can't get out of this. But he's one guy, and that's not how, hockey doesn't work the way some of the other sports do, where one guy can throw a team on his shoulders and get them there. He's going to need a ton of support, and that means a ton of guys playing a lot better than they are right now. And I don't see that. So I think that there's going to be a very difficult conversation that needs to be had somewhere down the road in a few months. And we'll see what happens because, look, if they found a way to trade Wayne Simmons and they traded Jake Voracek after all of that, then they can find a way to trade Claude Giroux too. It's just a conversation I think that needs to be had.
Yeah, well, and then you've got other guys on this team, that you just brought in here. Cam Atkinson's 32 years old. I mean, now what? What are you supposed to do with him? Hey, we brought you in here thinking that if we just kind of change the furniture around, that might help. Well, now you're stuck with a 32-year-old guy who's in the middle of a rebuild here. Same thing. I mean, Ellis, 30 years old, but obviously the injury kind of has clouded that situation. Yandel, 35. They brought guys in here. To me, the message this offseason was, we think we can compete.
Which is exactly why
Which means now you're stuck with older players on this team. I mean, that's why it's such an odd situation here.
Well, they've got guys that they can move because there's nothing to their contracts. Yandel's one of those types of guys. It was a 1-year deal. You can move that or ride out the season at that point. It doesn't matter. At the end of the year, the guy is gone and you have the money back. Not that it was a lot of money tied up. I mean, Derek Brassard's in that boat. Nate Thompson's in that boat. Like, you've got enough pieces where you can still transform this roster again. And even a guy like Rasmus Ristolainen, I mean, you can take a good long look at that one too and say, you know what, it was an expensive 1 year, but if more change is needed, then you can just go on with your life after this season without him, and he moves on and you move on, and it's part of the thing. It's awful.
Kevin Hayes.
Yeah, he's going to kind of probably be here for the long haul as well. That's just the way it is. And I mean, you have easier solutions for some than others. I mean, James Van Riemsdyk still got another year left on his contract, but that's pretty much, to me, a buyout at the end of the year already. I mean, you can already see that happening. He'd had a decent enough year last year that you could have probably tried to move him in the offseason. You opted to hold on to him, and you see what that's doing for you. He's not producing at the rate that you would need him to, and now you're probably going to be stuck having to do a buyout there, and that's going to be an awful lot of just dead money that's sitting on your cap there too.
So is Chuck Fletcher the right guy? I mean, do the Flyers ownership group, who we don't even know who the hell they are for the most part, do they say, we're going to let you hire the next coach and try to get us out of this mess?
Well, for right now, it seems that way.
It's not that he put you in the mess per se, but he's kind of made moves that are kind of, look, he did a good job in Minnesota until he basically capped them the hell out.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those questions that if I had all the answers, then I probably wouldn't be talking to you as an insider. I'd be working for the team at that point. I'd be probably trying to figure out the solution. We
know all the insiders know more than the people running the team.
That may be the case. I mean, I'm telling you what I think the sense of direction should be. Yeah. And
all right. So
I wish
is Tocchet your pick, or do you think that's the most real? Do you have another guy that's not on the list that's outside the box, or is that guy does he not exist?
There's a couple names that I can think of, and I saw a few floating around. Jim Montgomery is one. David Quinn's another. Jim Montgomery was coaching in Dallas for a little bit. He was an assistant with St. Louis under Craig Berube for a little bit too.
Quinn's interesting. Rangers, right?
Yeah, Quinn's interesting because to me, that's the type of coach I would hire.
He was a college coach,
right? But this is the type of coach I would hire because to me, for the last, I don't know how many years, it was probably about 3 or 4 years though, the Rangers had a coach like that and got to a point in certain seasons where they just kind of had to admit what they were and started selling off pieces. I mean, they trading Ryan McDonough to Tampa Bay. JT Miller was one guy they moved, and eventually what it led to was the ability for them to bring in players. They go out and they sign Artemi Panarin. They latch on to the other guys that they have that were starting to build. They drafted an awful lot. They drafted high an awful lot. I mean, in that range, they got a 2nd overall pick and a 1st overall pick. Again, kind of by luck more than by, being just an awful team for all those years. They were middle of the pack and kind of got lucky, but they had a coach that kind of bought you time as not necessarily the guy that you think of as a contending coach or a coach on a contending team. And then this past offseason, they go out and they hire Gerard Gallant. And all of a sudden, the whole narrative shifts because that's a totally different coach that kind of is a guy who you look at and you go, that's the type of coach that says they're going for it. And this morning, they woke up as the 4th best team in the league. So all of a sudden, it's like they waited their time out. They fired Quinn after last season. They brought in Gallant, and now all of a sudden, look at where they are. They drafted their next goalie of the future, literally the heir to Henrik Lundqvist, and they've got a Norris winning defenseman. They've got superstars up front. They've got guys who are top draft picks that don't have to be the superstars yet. So take a page out of a division rivals book, I would say, and look at something like that.
Sharp-dressed man, Kevin Durso, got the tie on. I'm imagining you're going to leave this conversation, jump in the car. He's on his way to the Wells Fargo Center. Flyers tonight, right back in action. Fired the coach this morning. By the way, I ran into Broads on Saturday.
Oh, yeah. How about that?
I was at the Cherry Hill Mall, and I was in Lululemon, and there's Broads. I mean, where else would he be? Where else would I run into Broads? Right?
Yeah,
I mean, if I was to say, I got to go find Hunter Brody, I haven't seen him in some time. He doesn't return my text or calls, which isn't true, by the way. Where would I go? Lululemon is where I find him. And there he was. Boom, right in Lululemon.
Maybe it's him that's part of this thing then too, because I haven't seen him. The last time I saw him was November 16th at the game against the Calgary Flames that they won in overtime. So there you go.
All right, Kevin Durso will be at the Flyers tonight as they take on Colorado. The Avs are in town, 7 o'clock. You can follow him, Kevin_Durso. His reactions and thoughts on the game over at 97.3ESPN.com. Great stuff, Durso. Thanks, man.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
All right, there's Kevin Durso, and, of course, all his coverage at 97.3ESPN.com. Oh, man, so many Flyers questions. Tomorrow, Pete Thompson on a Tuesday with Thompson will react to who could be the next Flyers coach. I know a lot of Flyer fans out there are going to want Rick Tocchet. I know his name has been out there. Marty in EHT says, first thing the Flyers need to do is rip the C off Giroux's jersey. Text message, Mike, Comcast needs to sell the Flyers to an actual hockey group or a person in order to turn this team around. And as much as I hate to see it, G has to go. Give Coots the C. Flyer fans, give me your reaction to Alain Vigneault being fired today. 609-403-0973. Back with more. Sports Bash taking you till 6 tonight. Josh has game night. Martin Frank will join him at 6:20. Martin does a great job covering the Eagles. He'll talk a little Birds tonight. Nick Sirianni and what he had to say. I want to get into real quick. We don't have a lot of time here before the top of the hour, Casey Joyner, but Sixers had a pretty nice win over the weekend. It's kind of a character win for them, but Joel Embiid had some interesting things to say after the game. You saw him celebrate that win as if they won the NBA championship or so. I mean, he was really pumped up. They went on the road and beat the Hawks. You know, they didn't have Tobias Harris. Obviously, they don't have Ben Simmons. Very shorthanded team here. They were down all game, came back and won that game. Now, look, I'm not going to be a hypocrite here. It's a Tuesday night in December or Saturday night in December. Not to be, maybe it's Friday night, actually. They played the game. It was Friday night they played the Hawks. But it was what Embiid said after the game that really stands out to me. And what he said was, quote, the fact of the matter is this: I'm still pissed off about what happened last year. To win means a lot to me. In our situation, we've got about $400 million worth of contracts not playing. Anytime you can get a win under man, missing 2 or 3 players, it's great confidence for our guys. So Embiid took that win against the Hawks maybe as a opportunity, as a jumping off point to get this season kind of back on track. They were on track. They were exciting. They were fun. Maxey, they got knocked off track. Well, back tonight, and you can hear the game against the Hornets on 97.3 ESPN. After that, we'll take you out to Monday Night Football. But this Hornets team tonight is missing essentially its entire roster. The Sixers should win this game tonight and win it handily. If you're doing any betting, look for the over in Embiid points. I steered you wrong the last time I went down there, but this Hornets team is literally using Josh to defend Embiid tonight.
Game's gonna
Final
be.
hour of the show here on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Casey Joyner, one thought every game. Going to join us in just a second. His appearance on the show, it's brought to you by Cape Regional Health System. For a healthier life, call 609-463-CAPE. Casey Joyner from The Athletic, Philadelphia Inquirer. He is set to break it all down for us. What happened in week number 13, plus a look at the big Monday Night Football game tonight, as we are set to bring him in. The football scientist from The Athletic, the Philadelphia Inquirer, Casey Joyner, right now here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Minshew Mania running wild. Casey Joyner, what's going on, man?
Yeah, he does have the kind of I think he could be a professional wrestler if he put his mind to it. He's got that kind of personality.
Yeah, he'd probably be in the cruiserweight division, though. But, let's take a look at what Minshew did yesterday. The numbers would suggest he had a great game. Would the tape say the same thing?
You're playing the Jets. I mean, that's a big part of it. You're playing the Jets. They were one of the worst coverage teams in the league. They're not very talented in their secondary to begin with. And then you add that they're injured. You know, when they're healthy, they were good, and they're banged up. So you add those things together. I mean, look at the passes to Goddard. The first pass for the touchdown, the linebacker kind of went 3/4 speed. It wasn't very fast to begin with. The safety made a terrible tackle. And the second play, you pick off Javelin Guidry, and he doesn't catch up. And why you got Javelin Guidry trying to cover Goddard anyway? Probably not a good sign for you because Guidry's not that good of a cornerback. I mean, I added up, and look, if you do that well against bad opponents, that's what you should do. That's great. But I'm not exactly thinking that that's what we'd see out of Minshew in the lab every game.
All right. So, a lot of people are ready to already pull the plug on Jalen Hurts. They want to see more Minshew. Nick Sirianni has already said Hurts is the guy. Of course he is. But did you see something from Minshew that adds more to the offense or not particularly?
Well, the thing I liked is, he didn't throw that many vertical passes in the game. And again, we just talked about a couple of them. And the idea that this is not a vertical offense. And as he threw 7 vertical passes, completes 4 for 111 yards, 2 touchdowns. But again, it was against the Jets. I think Jalen could have done the same thing. What I liked out of Minshew was on short passes, dink and dunk throws, 16-18 for 131 yards, 7.3 yards per attempt. I mean, those are really good numbers. No interceptions. You can live with that. You can build an offense around that. What I liked about it is I've wondered for a time, you've got Hurts who has a particular style, and you've got Minshew who's got another style. I thought, well, you usually like quarterbacks who have complementary styles, the same style, so you can run the same sort of offense. And we looked at what Minshew did and said, okay, the Eagles could still run a power running game with Minshew under center, and they can't do the same read option things, zone read things that they could do with Hurts, but he can still operate that running game and hit in the passing game. So I think I do like the combination of Hurts and Minshew, say, going forward, because I think there's enough here that they can still run their offense without having to change things.
Was the offense different? Was it did you watch that and say, you know what, they're doing different things because the quarterback's different? Nick Sirianni himself admitted last week that, hey, our drop back pass game is still a problem. So did you see a different offense?
You did, because you weren't seeing the zone read elements. The running game, as far as what they did a lot of the same inside zone, a lot of trapping yesterday. I think the Jets were trying to get upfield very, very aggressively to try to stop the inside zone game, and the Eagles said, fine, if you're going to do that, we'll trap you. That's great. I think they would have done that same thing if Hurts had been under center. So those things didn't change too much. It is in the passing game what they did, and some of the things that I think they were more comfortable calling drop back passes. I had a bit of a concern, because if you've got what could be an elite ground game with Hurts under center, and then you get to Minshew, I don't want to see the Eagles go back to the pass happy approach, but they did do more drop back elements, and they didn't do quite as much zone read elements. But again, 2/3, 3/4 of the offense, I would estimate, is probably the same. The running game didn't change at all, other than the zone read stuff, and I think that's a big plus. Plus, I think that Minshew could run the occasional zone read to keep some people honest, which is what you really need when you're running that.
It's a year ago to the day that the Eagles changed from Wentz to Hurts. Hurts gave them a little life, and they beat the Saints, and people were like, see, we should have done this all year, and then Hurts kind of came crashing back down. You wonder if that would be similar with Minshew. We talked about this early in the show, Casey. Minshew mania is a phenomenon that you really only hear about once or twice a year. It's not a weekly occurrence with guys like Minshew.
No, it reminds me of Ryan Fitzpatrick, where Fitz comes down there. We hear Fitzmagic, and Fitzmagic will work for a couple, 3 weeks, maybe a month, and then He runs out of steam. And mind you, think about it. Let's just assume for a minute you think Jalen Hurts, okay, he can be your starter. He can be your guy. We just came off a season a few years ago where the Eagles had to use a backup quarterback to win the Super Bowl. I mean, let's assume that Hurts being a running quarterback might be a guy who might get hurt. Okay, now you're going to need a backup. Okay, if you think of Minshew, you say, all right, I usually say about backup quarterbacks. You played 4 games and you put a backup in there, you're hoping he'll play well enough to help you win 2. Based on what we saw yesterday, yeah. If Minshew had to play 4 games, you could win 2 with him under center. So I mean, that he's a perfect backup quarterback. He's Don Strock. He's that kind of a guy where he can come in, give you a spark for a couple of games, and then go back on the bench, which is exactly what you need. So I don't think people should make more of this than what it is. He's a terrific backup quarterback. You got to win yesterday with him. That's who he is, and if he can keep it that way, that's a good thing for the next couple of years.
Well, see, you know what the rub here is, Casey. A lot of people don't like to give credit to Roseman, but he made a smart move to bring Minshew in here to say, hey, he went out and valued the backup quarterback position, found one, gave up low capital to get him. And look, like it or not, this team is in the playoff mix, and having a capable backup quarterback is one of the reasons they're still in this thing.
Howie Roseman is he's somebody who gets a lot of opinions. He would be somebody, if we use that professional wrestling thing, he would draw a lot of attention. He could be a beloved babyface or a hated heel. You're going to have a reaction to who he is and what he does. But the point is that, look, he makes some good moves. He hasn't stayed in the position he stayed in because the Eagles been a bad team for a long time. This is not. I grew up in Michigan, and they had a general manager there who they didn't do anything for the longest time. And Russ Thomas, you knew he was never going to get fired. It didn't matter how bad the team was. Well, the Eagles have won a Super Bowl. They've been a Super Bowl contender. They're a playoff contender this year, and they've had a lot of personnel changes, and he does a lot of good things. So, yeah, you need to give Howie Roseman credit when he does something well, and the Minshew signing was something he did very well.
The Eagles, by the way, at 6-7, have a better point differential than Green Bay, Baltimore, Tennessee. I mean, so I don't know. We talk about a smart trade. Good teams have good backup quarterbacks and value that position. Are the Eagles a good team?
The Eagles are still – remember how big of a change they made from where they were, the kind of offense you can run with Wentz to what you can run with Hurts, and figuring out earlier this year when you got the coordinator changes and you're not sure what kind of defense you want to run, you're not sure what kind of offense you want to run. Based on what we've seen over the past month, and personnel directors, general managers will tell you grade things based on about a 4-game span. Based on what we've seen over the last, say, 8 games, yeah, I think they're a good team. They're a solid team. And if you say, okay, where can you project this team if they had some improvements over free agency in the draft over the next couple of years? Could you project them as, okay, keeping up with the Cowboys, NFC East contenders? They're a long shot contender this year, but could you see it in the future saying, yeah, they can go to toe-to-toe? Sure, you get a couple of receivers in here, you get a couple of defensive changes, you get some other things, and you get your developing coordinators, get them to coach to their talent levels. Absolutely. So I think the trend is going upward for the Eagles, and people need to anticipate that and reflect that rather than keep thinking, okay, we need to keep rebuilding this team. Don't rebuild this team. You've got something to build on here. See where it can go.
Well, the answer to that always is, I don't trust the guy making the picks.
Yeah, I don't trust the guy making the picks. But again, hey, look, like it or not, he was the guy who brought in the people to win the Super Bowl. So you have to give the guy credit for that. And this is a team that we're not for a couple of bad bounces and things that can get somewhere. I see the ceiling of this team this year. I still see it as second round of the playoffs. I could see him getting that far. I don't know if this team has enough talent to get past that. I could see him get through the walk around and getting his second round. I could easily see it. And if that's where you are right now, why would you try and gut and rebuild the team and say, oh, this isn't working? Well, it's working for a playoff berth, and it worked for playoff berth under Peterson in the Super Bowl. So I'm not giving up on Howie Roseman. I know that's something most people don't want to think of, but really, he needs to get some credit because he's done this team and where they are right now. I mean, this team has a chance to do something. And we need to give him credit.
Not to mention the trade that he made with Miami to get their pick, and Wentz's game yesterday put him over 75%. So they now will have the Colts pick as well. So he made 2 trades that got you 2 extra first-round picks this year. This team is really, and look what Dallas did by adding just a couple of players to their defense. It really turned their defense around in one season. They were dreadful last year defensively.
They were, and if you look at offense too, when they brought in Cooper and they brought in CD Lamb, and they just changed the entire offense. You get 2 impact receivers, and suddenly an offense that wasn't a great passing game suddenly is one of the best in the league. And now you did the same thing in defense. Yeah, you can get those sorts of players, and you get that. I mean, it's bad that Miami's winning, so but still, you're going to have more picks, and they say more picks. Obviously, you look at the history of the draft, you get more picks, the better chance you have of succeeding. And he's not. The draft record for the Eagles is hit or miss, but let's not forget the hits, because there are some of them. And if you can get a couple of them in upcoming years, again, this team can be back to being a contender. If you get the tournament, then you can have a chance to win the thing. And a lot of teams, go ask Detroit, go ask Cleveland fans what they think about not being in the tournament. Eagles have been there for a lot, and I think Eagles fans are somewhat spoiled for what the success the team has had.
I've said that many times myself here on this show. 5 losing seasons in 20 years for the Philadelphia Eagles. All right, one thought every game. Here we go. Tampa Bay beats Atlanta. Tampa Bay, obviously, they go on the road. This game got kind of interesting, that interception down by the end zone. It was almost like they got a little too big for their britches there late.
They did, and that's a problem with them, is that they've got so much talent and they are that good that sometimes I think they don't play 4 quarters of a game. That would be a problem if when they face bad teams. But the thing is, they came back to it, and Brady is still Brady. So if he makes a bad play like that, he's going to make up for it, and he did. And mind you, this is a team that imagine if they get Antonio Brown back and they do bring him back. Well, as good as they're doing right now, I wrote about in the Athletic today. I mean, good night. They're going to have the volume of talent in that passing game is incredible.
Atlanta falls to 5-7 now in the wild card race. They are currently number 11. One thought every game. Casey Joyner from The Athletic. Arizona shows some dominance over Chicago, and they win that game 33-22.
They do, and they're finding different ways to win. This is not you thought coming into the season, okay, it's going to be Kyler Murray, it's going to be Hopkins, it's going to be they've got a 200 ground game. Well, they're missing one of their running backs, and Hopkins isn't obviously he's not been doing well, and Murray's been out, and the fact that they can go and dominate a Chicago team that when teams take Chicago and they don't take Chicago seriously, Chicago can keep up with them. And I give the Cardinals credit. The level of performance that they're at every week is the kind of thing that's going to get them, going to probably get them the number 1 seed in the NFC.
10-2, they are the number 1 seed currently in the NFC. Best record in all of football. The Chargers, man, they went on the road right when you want to believe in Cincinnati. They get the doors blown off them at home, 41-22, all Chargers.
It's a concern that their defense looked that bad. And Jamar Chase, you go back to about week 8 or week 9, he was offensive rookie of the year. He had the inside track, and now he's run out of gas. And mind you, Higgins is stepping up, but he has run out of gas. And the Bengals, I think, are finding that they don't have quite as many ways to win as they thought. But give the Chargers credit that they got their offense moving, and I think they realized they got to get into shootouts, and they're playing that kind of a game. And you're going to get a lot of shootouts, but Cincinnati yesterday couldn't keep up.
That why my fantasy team's stalling? That Jamar Chase guy is starting to bring me down.
Yeah,
one thought every game. We needed Detroit to win, and they did. They beat the Vikings 29-27. Where was the coverage on the final play?
It was terrible. It's poorly coached. You called that Bill. I remember seeing a thing with Bill Belichick, and he talked about that kind of coverage in the Super Bowl. And you're trying to set up a picket fence right on the, guard the goal line, and then make people get behind you and things. Well, they had a picket fence, but they had a couple of pickets on that fence 5 yards deep in the end zone. You just gave up, and that's what you're supposed to do. I feel so great for Detroit, but Minnesota, by the way, look at their metrics. Their metrics would say that they should be a much better team than they are when you look at a number of really important metrics of how they've done, and they keep losing. And that's the reason more than anything else. Losing to Detroit's a bad thing, but they're playing good and losing games. That's the kind of thing that gets coaches fired.
By the way, Minnesota falls to 5-7. They are number 9 in the NFC playoff race. One thought every game. Indianapolis all over Houston, 31-0. Big day for Jonathan Taylor.
Big David Jonathan Taylor. And Carson Wentz only throws for 158 yards, and they still, they dominated the game from top to bottom. The Houston offense, Tyrod Taylor's now, he's got a hurt wrist, I believe it is, and he was already playing badly. Houston's offense is just atrocious. It is easily the worst offense in the league. And Indianapolis, give them credit though. They come out against the division foe, and they didn't play down to their competition level. And they said, we're going to go ahead and just dominate this game, and they did. So that's a signature win for the Colts.
One thought every game, Washington, Vegas. This was the one game, we do a segment, who do you rooting for this week? You needed Vegas to win. Everybody else you needed. Seattle won, Detroit won. You need Tampa Bay beat Atlanta. You needed Vegas to come through. It's the only one that didn't, but Washington, 4 straight.
4 straight. Defense is playing a lot better. Again, backup kicker Brian Johnson, the lead singer for AC/DC, I guess. Or his son or something going out there and nailing that kick. And that's big because I mean they had kicker problems and they brought him out there and he hits that kick. I picked Washington to win that just because the Raiders are just not playing to their talent level, and you can see and you're hearing things now that maybe you don't ever say they're tanking for the season, but they're losing interest, they're losing faith in what the coaches and the team is having to offer. So I think that says more about where the Raiders are, where Washington is.
Washington 6-6. They are the 6th seed in the current NFC playoff race. One thought every game, Jacksonville Rams finally get back on track. And they're the bullies, man. You put a cupcake in front of them and they'll blow them out.
Yeah, they needed that because that was a team that they needed a signature kind of victory to get their confidence back because their confidence started to get shaken by some of the things that happened to them. If they didn't win that game by that much, you would question who they are. But that they did shows that, hey, the Rams can play to their talent level. They remind me in some ways of the 70s Rams. I know I'm going way back in the day there, but that team had always had tons of talent and not always play to their talent level, but you gave them certain situations they did, and that's what the Rams did yesterday.
One thought every game. How about this one? Pittsburgh at home holds on. They go for 2. Baltimore does. Harbaugh says we don't have any corners left, so we got to end the game here. The pass falls incomplete just off of Andrews' fingers. 20-19. Pittsburgh wins it.
TJ Watt. TJ Watt getting in there to force a little bit of an inaccurate throw, and they've been hitting Jackson all day. My son and I were Steelers fans in this household, and we're still shaking our heads like, how did the Steelers win that game? We still can't figure it out, but it's 7 sacks, and it's Baltimore. I never understand. Baltimore was a big run-heavy team, and now they're trying to be like, okay, we want to incorporate a lot of passing. They're not a passing team, but they don't run nearly as much as they did. It's like, that's who you guys are, and that's who you need to be, and they've gotten away from their identity, and they're still winning despite it, but that's why they lost that game because they need to get back to who they are because they should have ran the ball for 200 yards against Pittsburgh yesterday, and they didn't.
All right, one thought every game. San Francisco, they needed this game, and Seattle, who's really struggled, they put up a 30 spot last night, and the Seahawks, I don't want to say they're still in this thing, but I guess they've saved their season somewhat at 4-8.
Yeah, I saw an analysis on Twitter where somebody, I think it was Ben Baldwin, ran the numbers through the New York Times playoff predictor and said if the Seahawks go 9-8, they still have a 59% chance of making the playoffs. Like, wow, really? That shows you.
They're only 2 games out right now.
It's incredible. That's kind of bad because we really shouldn't have 7 playoff teams, but that's a different discussion. But San Francisco, that's a game. They had more talent than Seattle, and I know it's a road game, and I know it's a division game, but they got outplayed big time in that contest. They got outcoached too because that fake punt for the touchdown, that was a big difference in the game, and that says something for San Francisco. That I don't know they did take Seattle seriously, but that stings because that's a game you should win, and they didn't.
Denver, Kansas City, Sunday Night Football. What about the Chiefs defense? They win 22-9.
Chiefs defense right now is a top 10 defense.
How about that comment?
Yeah, they are. If you go look at their metrics over the past, say, 4 or 5 weeks, I've looked at a bunch of different metrics from coverage and run defense and a number of different areas. They're that good right now. They're dominating teams on defense, or pretty darn close to dominating, and they did that yesterday. Denver, mind you, hey, look, they held Kelsey and they held Hill in check, and mind you, Bridgewater threw for more passing yards than Mahomes did yesterday. And you think about it, in fact, they rushed for more. They had the leader in the game in passing yards, rushing yards, and receiving yards, and they still lose 22-9. So Spagnuolo deserves a ton of credit, and Denver needs more offense. But Kansas City, that's who they're going to be. They're going to be a defensive team and win via that route because they know they can't afford. Their offense is just too mistake prone this year to win otherwise.
Big one in the AFC East tonight, Monday Night Football. One thought on this game: Buffalo at home. Apparently, the weather up there is brutal.
Oh yeah, the ESPN reportedly has taken down the overhead cam. That's not going to be there. It's going to be 40-mile-an-hour winds. It's going to be. It's going to be an interesting game. I took the over a couple of days ago for a spot I did for the Athletic. I took the over thinking, not realizing it's going to be 40-mile-an-hour winds. So obviously I think this will be a defensive slugfest. But if it is, that really benefits the Patriots because the Bills have a linebacker who just got put into COVID. Klein got put into COVID just recently ago. They lost Tre'Davious White. Their defense is not nearly what it was. And I think if you get a ground game, the Patriots win this one.
All right, there you go. One thought every game with Casey Joyner. He's back on Friday as we take one thought on every game for Week 14. Eagles have their bye week this week. They will play the Washington football team in 2 weeks. Washington and Dallas play twice. Washington and Philly play twice. So this is going to get real interesting. If you're Philly, do you root for Washington or Dallas?
I'm rooting for Washington to pull Dallas back down, actually, because I think that Dallas is a flawed team. But honestly, what they really need, I ran it for the Eagles. I ran the sync for the Eagles through that New York Times playoff predictor for an article I did for the Inquirer a couple weeks ago. And the problem is for the Eagles is that they lost that divisional game last week. I mean, they lose to the Giants. That's a big loss, and it hurts them. So they need divisional losses. And if they get Washington, give Dallas one divisional loss and maybe even a second divisional loss, then you can overtake them there. So I'm probably still I want everybody to be down to getting in the same place because I think they could overtake Dallas, but either one would do.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. They play twice. Dallas and Washington play twice. Philly's mixed in there. So Washington football team, they really have this thing laid out in front of them. They can beat Washington, can beat Dallas twice. They could really win this division. They have it kind of laid out right in front of them. All right, Casey Joyner's back on Friday. We'll dig deeper into Week 14. And, of course, he does it right here on a Monday on the Sports Bash. Casey, take care, pal.
Appreciate it, man.
All right, Casey Joyner from The Athletic at Casey Joyner TFS on Twitter and the Philadelphia Inquirer. He covers the NFL for everybody out there and does a great job right here with one thought on every game. You know how many people always come up to me and say, I love the one thought on every game segment. Like Casey just rips through, gives a thought, boom, boom, boom. Very knowledgeable on all the teams. But he did mention about Minshew and Hurts that, hey, Minshew did not, somebody is over on the video stream. Jonathan L. says Minshew should be the starter for the rest of the year, not necessarily because he's better, but he can actually throw the ball 15 yards down the field. Like, what game do you guys watch? Jalen Hurts, my buddy texts me all the time about, Hurts can't throw. He can't throw. Hurts, does he have a bazooka for an arm? Is he airing it out 80 yards down the field? No. But Minshew doesn't have any arm either. And by the way, Hurts has multiple throws of 40 yards down the field this year. The drop to Jalen Reagor, the drop to Quez Watkins, those two come to mind, by the way. Teams don't just start throwing bombs down the field. They happen every so often. This is not an offense that asks for what throws did Minshew make 40, 50 yards down the field, Jonathan L? Come on, dude. You're better than that. Minshew's weakest part of his game is his arm strength. He's got a weak arm. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. Inside the NFC East will go with Jeff Kerr. He was at the game yesterday. What did he see from Minshew Mania? He'll tell us next. All right, Sports Bash back with you here on a Monday. Jeff Kerr's appearance is brought to you by the Solar Team of New Jersey. EMT Solar and Roofing, Solar Guardian. Start your solar journey today. Learn more. Visit espnsolar.com. Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports. He was in the building yesterday. He got to experience Minshew Mania in person. What was it like? What was it like? He's here to tell us right now on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. What's going on, Jeff?
I'll tell you what, Mike, it was pretty crazy yesterday. When I saw him walk in with that Maverick jacket, I'm like, okay, something's going to happen today. This guy's probably going to throw for like 303 touchdowns. He was pretty damn close. I'll say that. He had a flawless first half yesterday, and I had a front row seat to all the action, to the code and everything, and got to see him get his stuff as he was heading out the door. It was definitely interesting. All the questions were toward Gardner Minshew. We forgot Jason Kelce got hurt yesterday.
We did, and they addressed that today, so we'll get to that as well. But obviously, Minshew's game, it's, everybody there, who's going to be the quarterback. Sirianni already squashed it, but people are taking sides. You were there. I'm watching the game on television. I see a guy with a great day. I'm not minimizing his game at all. But some of these throws, you can see he doesn't have the arm strength. He underthrew Goddard. Goddard has to stop, wait for the ball, catch it. Now, the Jets are so bad, they didn't have a defender anywhere near him to stop, but you're in person. Tell me a little bit about the game. The numbers say one thing. What did it say watching him?
So this is how I evaluated his first half. There were a couple throws. The Goddard one you mentioned. I thought it was a bit underthrown, but overall, I thought it was a good ball. But again, how much stock do we put in the worst defense in the NFL? The Jets. There was a throw. I thought this was a good throw, but he was pressured. He went to his right, his left a little bit, takes about 2 steps. Quez Watkins is wide open. And I'm like, okay, he's going to hit him. But Watkins had to run 5 or 6 yards back to get the ball. Now they convert the first down, but Minshew puts a little more air on that, or has a little bit more arm strength. It's a touchdown. And, they eventually scored a touchdown on that drive anyway, but you're seeing my point, Mike. I feel like this team would have been able to score a lot of points yesterday with Jalen Hurts as a quarterback as well. But this is why my column came out, because I thought the pass offense was more efficient. I thought there wasn't as many zone reads. There weren't as many RPOs with this guy. And I had to bring up the question. Jalen Hurts is the quarterback. I think Jalen Hurts should be the quarterback. But could Nick Sirianni pull the plug on this? Can he reverse course after 2 weeks? He's got 2 weeks to think about this. Does he really want to roll in the Gardner Minshew? Personally, I think Jalen Hurts is the best option to beat the Washington football team.
Well, it's so hard because you're trying to, like week 1, Hurts has a 3-touchdown game and people are excited. And the answer was, well, they played the Falcons, right? Now, the Falcons are at least a mediocre team. The Jets are a bad team. But it doesn't seem that the caveat is there for Minshew. Oh, wow, they just beat the Jets. It seems that people are overlooking that they beat the Jets, and they want to see Minshew because of what you said. He was a little bit more efficient in throwing the ball. But when you really peel the curtain back, these throws, this wasn't like the 70s Raiders, taking shots down the field. Everything was tight end, running back against a defense that is awful against the tight end and the running back.
And you and I kind of point this out too. This is how I viewed the whole Gardner Minshew thing. If you wanted my honest opinion on it, doesn't it feel smart that the Eagles had a backup quarterback that could go in there and win that game? Because guess who was going to be that guy? Joe Flacco. They traded him to the Jets for the same compensation they got for Gardner Minshew. Gardner Minshew is better than Joe Flacco. The Eagles have, at the very worst, a competent backup quarterback. But it's nice to see Nick Sirianni, when he does get the quarterback maybe he wants. Nick Sirianni called a really good game yesterday. I think the most impressive thing about this game was, and look, I know the Jets give up the most rushing touchdowns and they give up the second most yards per carry in the league. The Eagles still ran for 185. What
they also do, Jeff, is they are horrendous at defending the screen and running backs out of the backfield. And this is a part of the offense that we haven't seen a whole heck of a lot of, throwing the ball to the running backs out of the backfield. But he saw, hey, they don't defend, and they did a good job. We talked about this on Friday's show. I talked with Sal Powell about this. Why did the Eagles not throw the ball to their backs? Well, they did it a little bit more, and they used the tight end. They really scaled back and simplified the offense. And I wonder, Is that a product of Minshew? Does he just say, hey, that's who I feel comfortable with? Or was that Sirianni? Did they change the offense a little bit?
So I look at it two ways. My biggest criticism of Jalen Hurts is he doesn't throw the screen that well. And the short passes he's not great at. So that needs to improve in Jalen Hurts' game going forward. But Gardner Minshew made Leonard Fournette a 77 catch back in Jacksonville. He's done this before. And, I remember the whole critiques about Leonard Fournette. He can't catch ball out of backfield. He had 77 catches the year Gardner Minshew was his quarterback. He said Gardner Minshew was great at throwing him screen pass. It all depends on the quarterback.
Well, keep in mind, in Jacksonville, if you remember, they had Blake Bortles. They wanted to throw the ball down the field, and Minshew couldn't do it. So they went out and got who? Nick Foles.
Yep.
And Foles got hurt, and they had to throw back to Minshew. And, they wanted to be a team that took shots down the field. Minshew could not do it. They were a dink and dunk type of offense.
Yeah, and teams don't like that, but Gardner Minshew, in a way, he's kind of like Taylor Heineke. He's not.
I bring that up for context. I get a comment like this from a viewer who says, Minshew should be the starter for the rest of the year, not necessarily because he's better, but he can actually throw the ball 15 yards down the field. But he can't. Right? Minshew's biggest weakness is he has a weak arm. He cannot throw the ball. He's not going to throw the ball down the field.
Yeah, Jalen Hurts can throw a 15-yard pass down the field. I'm telling you, Dallas Goedert would have a big day with Jalen Hurts too. This is where the whole controversy a lot, because Dallas Goedert, and trust me, I am looking right at the Eagles PR people as this is happening. And they're like, oh, man, you had to say that. It's not my decision. Ultimately, it's not my decision. I don't really care who the quarterback is. Yeah, I guess so. You just had a career high in receiving yards and receiving touchdowns in the game with the other guy. But Devonta Smith was basically a non-factor yesterday, and that shouldn't happen either.
Yeah, I was wondering if he was hurt and or something's wrong with him. Now,
no.
Sirianni brought up today that he was not hurt, and I don't know. I mean, you look at the situation at hand here is I thought Minshew played a good game. I'm not trying to knock this kid at all, but to me, it's you tweeted this out. I responded. It's the sign of a good organization who values the backup quarterback. Problem is, a lot of people don't want to give this organization kudos for being smart or making smart decisions. But good teams have good backup quarterbacks, and good teams make smart, savvy moves in the offseason. And this team did. They got a quarterback to back up for a 6th-round pick. It allowed them to trade the other quarterback and get the pick back in return. And by the way, they absolutely, made a smart decision because Minshew is a very low-paid guy who's got another year left on his deal.
Yeah, it's crazy. And you know what? Gardner Minshew, yeah, he does kind of want the starting quarterback job, but he's right. He had the perfect quote yesterday, which I had to tweet. Who doesn't want that? Anybody who's half competitive wants that. But whoever my role is, I'm going to give it 100%. That sounds like a Nick Foles type quote to me, honestly. He don't care what his role is. He wants to see the Eagles win football games. If they got to rely on Gardner Minshew to do it, he's all for it. But he will support Jalen Hurts 100%. He's not going to be like, see, I told you. No, that's not how this guy rolls. And that's why I think Jalen Hurts will be better for this. Watch. And Gardner Minshew said, look, I've been through this, and it's helped me progress in my game. And it's going to help Jalen Hurts as well.
Now, you wrote over at CBS Sports that Minshew made his case. Will Sirianni reverse the course? You said the numbers tell the story. What are the numbers that stand out about it?
So this is what was key to me. We just talked about week 1, right? Gardner Minshew had a higher completion percentage in the game, 80% than Jalen Hurts has ever had. Ever. The highest Jalen Hurts had was week 1. And you got to remember something. 3 of those incompletions were throwaways. The Eagles still ran the ball as efficiently as they've done, which, again, I don't think it matters who's back there. Jalen Hurts, Gardner Minshew, they're going to run the football. Dallas Goedert had his best day. And look, I had to point out, too, they were playing the Jets. You have to point out they're playing the Jets. The Jets are ranked 32nd in points allowed, dead last. They're 31st in yards allowed. So this was not a good defense. But the Eagles got how can I put it nicely? They got a decision to make. They do. I don't think they should reverse course. I think it should be Jalen Hurts, but I wanted people to be the judge. Everybody goes, oh, you're bringing up a controversy. No, I'm not. I'm not bringing up a controversy. Yeah. I'm just putting up numbers there. I'm making you make the decision. I didn't make the decision. That's not my job. That's what columnists do. That's why it was called a column.
Good stuff, and you can check that column out over at CBS Sports at Jeff Kerr CBS on Twitter to get the link for that as well. Eagles now, they are the number 8 seed. They are a half a game out of the NFC playoff field. That's because Washington was able to come back and beat Vegas last night to get to 6-6. My question for you is this: Washington and Dallas play twice. Who should Eagles fans be rooting for?
You got to root for Dallas. You have to, because one, the Eagles aren't winning the NFC East. I'm sorry, they're not. I could be dead wrong about this, Mike, and on January 9th, you can replay this. They're not winning the NFC East. They are not winning. But this is why you got to root for Dallas, because one, Dallas wins. That puts Washington 6-7, and you're tied with them going into week 14 or week 15. Here's the other trick to all this. The quicker Dallas wins the NFC East and the quicker their playoff position is sealed, week 18 doesn't matter, and the Eagles might get a free one out of that. So
no backdoor on the NFC East is in your mind. You're saying let Dallas have the division, bring Washington back to the pack.
Yep, and then the Eagles – the Eagles got to beat them twice anyway. But it's a lot easier when you're tied with them instead of being the game back of them.
Well, let's just say Dallas loses both of those games, right? That moves them to 6-8. If
they also got to play a bad football team in the Giants that the Eagles should have beaten, but I digress.
Right. Washington, though, plays Dallas twice. They also play Philly twice, and their other game is against the Giants.
It's interesting. You know what? I actually thought Washington was going to lose yesterday. I thought that.
Look, we do a segment where you say we say who you're rooting for, and I go down the schedule and I'll say you're rooting for if you want the Eagles to make the playoffs. You needed Seattle to beat San Fran, that happened. You needed Detroit to win yesterday, and that happened. You were rooting for Tampa to beat Atlanta, that happened. I mean, everybody that you needed won except for Washington. So Washington, though, has won 4 in a row. I can't see them being a team that just rips off 8-9 straight.
But I'm going to say this. It actually worked out well for the Eagles yesterday because
it was a great day for them.
In my mind, there are 3 teams battling for 2 spots. Washington, San Francisco, and Philadelphia. You got to play one of them twice. Obviously, the Eagles lost to San Francisco hurts, but that was week 2. That was 3 months ago, a long time ago. I'm not even worried about that. You're going to lose the tiebreaker to them. I honestly think it's going to be San Francisco and between Washington and Philadelphia. Maybe the NFC East gets 3, but San Francisco would have to have a major collapse for that to happen.
Well, they lost yesterday to Seattle, so that brought them back. Because if they would have won that game yesterday, they're 7-5, and you're almost giving them the 6th spot. What that loss did yesterday, Jeff, was it put the 6 and 7 seeds up for grabs over the last 5 weeks.
By the way, Washington is the 6th seed. How crazy is that? They are the 6th seed.
They were 12 at the start of last week. They were 12. They're 6 now. What else happened yesterday? You had Minnesota's now 5-7. Carolina had the bye. They're 5-7. Atlanta lost. They're 5-7. New Orleans lost on Thursday night. They're 5-7.
Just don't even worry about the NFC South. Those 3 teams are terrible. Carolina just inexplicably fired their offensive coordinator. The Saints are, they're just a mess. They are. It's not
crazy.
They're just beat up, and Atlanta's Atlanta.
Jeff, it was a wild week, but in the end, the Eagles have a bye at a great time. Now they get, because Kelsey, as you mentioned, it looks like he should be ready to go next week. Give Sanders some extra time off. Whether you like it or not, it gives Hurts more time to get himself back ready. So the Eagles have a bye this late in the year. Here we go. Who thought Nick Sirianni, a guy no one's ever heard of, 6 wins already. He's got you playing meaningful football in the month of December. What more could you have asked for coming off a 4-win year last year?
There was a guy on Facebook on the Eagles on CBS page that was ripping Sirianni saying, oh, you mean to tell me they're under 500 with this so-called franchise quarterback and this so-called genius head coach? And I'm like, if you actually thought the Eagles would be over 500, and they're not, but you actually thought the Eagles were going to be over 500 this year and a lock for the playoffs with a first-year head coach and really a first-year starting quarterback, you're not that big of an Eagles fan, or you're dense.
Yeah, these people out there the contradictory goes back and forth day to day. By the way, I don't know whose network has those Saturday games, CBS or Fox, but they're probably saying, man, I wish we would have taken that Eagles-Redskins Washington game.
It's NFL Network. It's NFL Network. It's not even us.
For the Saturday games, right?
Yeah, for the Saturday game.
Because the Eagle-Washington game was up for a Saturday game, and they decided not to go with it.
I was all for it. Like, I was about to say to work, I'm like, look, I would love to go see Washington, Philadelphia, and I still might try to, but I'm definitely going to be down at FedEx Field for that second game. There's no ifs, ands, or buts on that.
All right. Well, Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports, got a roll, bud. NFC East, of course, Dallas, they played on Thursday night. They won. The Giants lost yesterday, which means the Dolphins are in play for a playoff berth as well. I'll do my who's in, who's out tomorrow and tell you who I think's getting in. Jeff will be back on Wednesday.
I'm ranking the AFC wildcard contenders after tonight. I hate how tonight is an awesome game, Mike, but I hate how it's Patriots Bills tonight because it's delaying everything I want to do.
All right. Jeff Kerr's back on Wednesday. Thanks, man.
That sounds great. Thanks for having me on, Mike.
All right. Jeff's back Wednesday. He's brought to you by the expert solar team, EMT Solar and Solar Guardians. Start your solar journey today. Visit ESPNsolar.com. EMT Solar and Roofing and Solar Guardians, ESPNsolar.com. We'll wrap up the show. Final thoughts next. Don't forget game night tonight. Martin Frank from the Delaware News Journal at 6:20 tonight joins Josh on game night. And then the Sixers and the Hornets tonight, and then we'll take you out to the Monday Night Football game. This is the Sports Bash. 552 Sports Bash. Josh, college football. We didn't get a big chance to talk about it, but I did want to bring it up because we've got the college football rankings. They're all up to date now. We've got Alabama wins. Now, I mean, everybody kind of thought Georgia was going to win this game, and I was kind of in like, I'll believe it when I see it mode. I bet Alabama, like my Christmas was taken care of. Thank you, Alabama. I had no bone in my body that thought Alabama was losing that game.
Listen, I was surprised. I'll admit it, because Alabama honestly looked like garbage half the year.
I mean,
and they had the perfect strategy against Georgia's defense. They did an amazing job at executing, and Georgia didn't have an answer. And you saw what happens when you have a, for lack of a better term, Gardner Minshew type quarterback trying to lead a team back down 20 points.
Here's the issue. If Georgia wasn't perfect, you'd look back and say, what was their signature win?
Of if they beat Alabama, they didn't beat Alabama.
If they weren't undefeated all the way to the end of the year, I'm saying. Like, the fact that they lost this game, you know, you look back and say, well, they didn't really have a signature win. I mean, they beat Kentucky, who is
they're a ranked team.
Right. They beat Auburn, who gave Alabama some problems, and it was at Auburn. They beat Clemson on the opener, and that game was 10-3, and Clemson turned out to not be all that good.
Well, what's Alabama's signature win?
I don't know that Alabama had a signature
that's
win
my point.
either, but my point is I
Neither
think
team
we
did.
crowned Georgia as this dominant team when they really weren't.
I think that if you gave up blind resumes, you'd find out that teams like Baylor and Michigan have way better resumes than
Well, here's
Alabama
the problem,
and
too.
Georgia.
The SEC is like the ACC in basketball.
Mm-hmm.
They have two teams that stand out, and the rest of the conference is just
there.
Okay. I mean, we act like the SEC is almost the NFL, when quite frankly,
well, they do produce a lot of NFL
they
players.
have great players. I'm not suggesting, but my point is they don't have this plethora of great teams. Florida is not Florida anymore.
Oh, heck no.
You know, most of the teams in the SEC, you know, when Kentucky's one of your best football, Kentucky was better than Tennessee. They were better than South Carolina. They were better than Florida. They were better than LSU. You don't have that good of a conference when Kentucky's your next best team.
I'll give you that.
So the SEC was completely overrated. And
it's two teams and everybody else.
It was Georgia and Bama. I mean, Ole Miss is just okay.
That's why I think that if somebody's smart, they should go get a Michigan and prop swap that.
Well, we talked about that today with Luke. I mean, they were 100-1 at one point. And Cincinnati, by the way, some people are going to say, well, they're probably going to get blown out by Alabama. By the way, Notre Dame's been blown out by Alabama. The power conferences have been blown out by Alabama.
Listen, it's a very dangerous thing that when you have multiple weeks to prepare, we saw what happened years ago with Alabama.
Now, we're going to have to go to the tape on this because you were trying to tell me that they should have or were going to play Georgia, Alabama in the first round of this.
I never said that.
We're going to go to the tape. I said we got to go to the tape on this. And I kept telling you, no, they want to play that. They want to have the rematch for the championship.
I agreed with you.
No. You did not agree with me.
Yes, I did.
We're going to find the tape.
Well, go. Well, you remember what date it was?
Well, if I find it, we're going to. Yes, I do remember what day it was, by the way.
What day was it?
It was either Wednesday or Tuesday of last week.
Figure it out.
I will. I will bring that tape out tomorrow. I will find it tonight, and I will bring that tape out tomorrow. All right, game night's coming up next.